Chapter 93. Genius 1, Second Remember Love, /go/little. Showa Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Mo Xiaofei sat there in a daze for a long time, as if he had lost his soul. The boss of the club had left quietly. After a long while, Mo Xiaofei suddenly raised his head and subconsciously pointed at a steel pipe with his finger. The steel pipe directly left the ground and floated. Mo Xiaofei took a deep breath, then pointed at the second one, the third one. Well, it's all right. However, when he pointed at the fifth steel pipe, a wisp of blood gushed out from his nose. Clang! Clang! Several steel pipes fell to the ground, intertwining with each other. I have no power. I have no power. If I continue to use power, I will die. I will die. I will die. He hugged his head, curling up his body. Mo Xiaofei didn't know how he came back home. Mo Xiaofei's brain was almost blank. The threat of death at any time had caused a terrible wound that would never heal with just a light stroke in his heart. Xiaofei? Mo Hongqi heard the noise, pushing his wheelchair out of the studio. Seeing his son full of curses, he couldn't help frowning. What happened? Mo Xiaofei shook his head, saying instinctively, Dad, nothing. I'll cook for you. He walked into the kitchen. During this period, especially in recent days, Mo Xiaofei didn't cook for his father, who couldn't move as usual after returning home. If he didn't want to die, he shouldn't use his power. Then, should he continue to live like before? Continue to live like before. Anyway, there was no threat from Brother Quan from the beginning. I will die, I will die, I will die, I will die. I don't want to die, I don't want to die, I don't want to die, I don't want to die. After dinner, Mo Xiaofei stealthily put his father's firefighter uniform and gas mask back to their original places when his father returned to the workshop without saying anything. Just when he stuffed them into the cabinet, he suddenly heard Mo Hongqi's voice. Xiaofei, what are you doing? Mo Xiaofei didn't hold it firmly, and a set of clothes fell to the ground. Mo Xiaofei turned around in a flurry, only to see his father approaching with a wheelchair. I plan to take it out and wash it. It's been in there for too long. Mo Xiaofei didn't dare to look at his father. He lowered his head and picked up the clothes on the ground as a cover. Mo Hongqi smiled and reached out to take the fire uniform from Mo Xiaofei's hand. He laid it on his lap and fiddled with it. There was a trace of nostalgia in his eyes. He had worn this uniform recently, and several times at that. Mo Hongqi did not intend to expose him. Suddenly, he looked at his son and said, While your mother is not at home, help me put it on. I haven't worn it in a long time. Regardless of whether Mo Xiaofei would agree or not, Mo Hongqi took the initiative to put on his shirt. Seeing this, Mo Xiaofei had to help his father put on his pants. Finally, he helped his father stand up and came to the mirror. Mo Hongqi rubbed his belly that had gained weight for a long time. He smiled and said, Yes, my figure is completely out of shape. It is indeed a little ugly to wear. Mo Xiaofei hurriedly said, No, Dad, you look the best in it. Mo Hongqi smiled and didn't say anything. He just sat down, took off his clothes, and slowly folded them. Mo Xiaofei couldn't help but ask, Dad, have you ever regretted it? At that time, raging fire, thick smoke, screams, heat, and despair. These memories from a long time ago were suddenly evoked. Mo Hongqi touched the collar of the firefighter uniform and carefully tidied it. He suddenly whispered, It's not because you want to be a hero or anything. When you put on this uniform, you should do something. What is the meaning it gives you? Mo Xiaofei was startled, but Mo Hongqi gently patted Mo Xiaofei's shoulder. Mo Xiaofei suddenly lowered his head. That also requires the ability to do something. If you don't have the ability, what's the point? Mo Hongqi was silent for a while and suddenly asked, If you're in a fire, the conditions are very bad and your physical strength has reached the limit, and you know that you may die if you stay for 10 more seconds. But you have a person who has fainted due to excessive inhalation. If you take him away, you have no way to safely evacuate. What will you do? Mo Xiaofei looked at him blankly. Mo Hongqi shook his head and said, If you insist, there's a great chance that you will lose 2 lives. But if you give up, no one will blame you. After all, you have tried your best. So what will you choose? If you continue to use this ability, your body will collapse faster. Are you still willing to be a hero? 2 different questions, but they seem to be very compatible. They kept intertwining in Mo Xiaofei's mind and turned into a bottomless whirlpool. And at the bottom of the whirlpool was death. I don't know. The class meeting. About the fundraising activities organized to help Luo Sha's classmates. They didn't know the situation of Luo Sha's father. The class organized a group of students to visit him. Mo Xiaofei subconsciously wanted to sign up, but when he raised his hand halfway, he quietly put it down. No one noticed him. From now on, he couldn't use his ability or his body would collapse. He didn't want to make his parents sad. The short hero dream had been shattered at this moment. If he needed to return to reality, he would be an ordinary person, a freshman in high school. Once again, he returned to his timid self. I heard that several students in our school died a few days ago. It seems that they were killed by someone when they mingled with the underworld. Oh, so horrible. I heard that Lily's father also disappeared these days. Don't say that. Although her father often beats people when he is drunk, he is still her father. He must be worried. Alas, what happened recently? I always feel that there are a lot of bad things. Those people, those prisoners in the prison. Mo Xiaofei lowered his head. He went home in a daze yesterday, so he didn't pay attention to those guys. If he didn't pay attention to them, they might starve to death. Mo Xiaofei gave a start. His hands and feet were cold. When the heat brought about by psychokinesis was completely cooled down due to the threat of death, as if it was completely cooled by cold water, he suddenly woke up with a start. How many families had he created that had fallen into pain? Teacher, I have something to do. I need to ask for leave. In the class meeting, this thin and weak boy, who usually kept his head down and remained silent, suddenly stood up, and his voice was heard clearly by everyone. After saying that, he quickly ran out of the classroom, leaving nothing behind. Go scream. Ruin Xiling frowned, looking at Mouse Chong, who was known as Mouse Chong in the underworld. Basically, it was not only the police who could develop informants. As a senior reporter, she also needed such people. Yeah, 2 of my friends were short of money. They had no choice but to go to that place to get some scrap iron, steel, electric coil, and so on to sell. In the end, they didn't get the things, but they were almost scared to death. Idiot, there are no ghosts in this world. Ruin Xiling shook her head. It must be your bad friends who did something wrong and scared themselves. Really? Mouse Chong said vividly. I heard from those 2 guys that they heard a tinkling sound and then saw dozens of figures as if they were hanging in the air, wailing all the time. I heard that there were ghosts in that place before it was abandoned. It's so evil. Really? Ruin Xiling frowned. Dozens of people, tinkling sound, hanging, wailing? Where on earth is that place? Ruin Xiling suddenly asked. After asking Mouse Chong, she gulped down the hot fresh milk in the cup and stood up quickly. Alas, madam, did you forget something? You stay here and watch. If you see that damn bodyguard, go downstairs. I'll pay you double. Sub-editor Ren hurriedly left the ice room after saying that. Mouse Chong counted with his fingers and felt that double the information fee was not bad. He simply ordered a cold drink. It was so hot outside, it was better to sit here. Wait, what if they don't come downstairs? Mouse Chong stared blankly at the red mini clubman that was driving away. Old Ma, I just received the news that they might have found out where those missing people are. The female driver who was used to speeding on the road was also used to making illegal phone calls. In the hospital, Officer Ma, who was eating the waste and kidney tonic soup made by his wife, choked. Are you kidding? I said it's possible. I'll go and have a look. I'll inform you if there's any news. Wait, don't act recklessly. Tell me the location. I'll ask my assistant to go and have a look. No, you come to the hospital to pick me up. Officer Ma frowned. If you really meet that guy, you can't deal with him. Can you get out of bed? Are you kidding me? When I was a soldier in Yunnan, I couldn't die even if I was shot by 5 or 6 bullets. Are you really okay? Ren Xiling looked at Officer Ma, who was still wearing the hospital gown, and stopped the car. Officer Ma touched his mustache and suddenly looked at Rin Xiling's car window with a surprised expression. Sub-editor Run was stunned and turned her head subconsciously. Unexpectedly, at this moment, her hand was caught by someone. Officer Ma skillfully handcuffed Rin Xiling's arm to the steering wheel. Sub-editor Run was angry. "I treat you as my family member. How dare you handcuff me?" Officer Ma said with a bitter face, "Be reasonable, sister-in-law. You'd better leave the rest to the police. You stay here. If I find anything, I'll call for backup." "Ma Hout, let go of me. Or I'll tell your wife that you go to the healthcare center 10 times a month." Officer Ma pretended that he didn't hear him and pulled out his car key. But he couldn't help but retort, "If I could go there 10 times a month, why would I need to drink the waste and kidney-nourishing soup? Don't court death. If that guy is really hiding inside, he's more dangerous than you think." Rin Xiling was so angry that she didn't say a word. Officer Ma looked at her and had to get off the car. After getting off the car, Sub-editor Rin said in a low voice, "The phone is turned on. Keep the communication. I can react if something happens. I'll deal with you later." "Got it, sister-in-law." Officer Ma closed the car door and climbed over the iron fence slowly towards the factory building. "Master, don't we need to care about Miss Rin?" And when the factory building floors, you let go of the shutter and let it return to its original state. The club's boss also felt incredible that Rin Xiling and Uncle Ma could find this place. He wanted to give Uncle Ma a thumbs up, but he shook his head and said directly, "Don't care." "What about Officer Ma?" Yi continued to ask. Luochio thought for a while and said, "I just wanted to see what state Mo Xiaofei is in today. I don't know what will happen next. Let's wait and see." He walked to the other side of the room, opened the door, and quietly looked down at a place in the workshop. In the abandoned workshop, Mo Xiaofei was stirring the capstan to put down the people who had been hanging for a day and a night. The color on the young man's face couldn't be distinguished. However, at this moment, a fluttering butterfly rushed in out of nowhere. Luochio stretched out his hand, and the butterfly finally stopped on his finger. Just when it stopped, the butterfly flew away as if it was frightened. Bathed in the faint brilliance, the butterfly gradually changed into a familiar figure. "Little butterfly monster, Luo Dance. Why was this butterfly monster here?" Boss Luo showed a puzzled look. Unexpectedly, this little butterfly monster said in a panic, There's a horrible thing chasing me. Run." Luochio gave a start and kept silent. The door of the workshop was opened at the same time. Officer Ma howled, "Let them go by themselves after they wake up." Mo Xiaofei thought, although these people are weak, they should be able to leave by themselves if they are released. Since I plan to be an ordinary person again, I'll make a clean break with these absurd and weird things. "Sorry." Mo Xiaofei silently looked at the people who were put down, but the ones he was apologizing to were the family and friends behind these people. Rumble, rumble. The door of the workshop sounded at this moment. Mo Xiaofei gave start. His first reaction was, is the boss of that place coming again? Is he going to laugh at me again? Mo Xiaofei took a deep breath. Let it be. Thinking back, what I did during this period is indeed worth laughing at. I've always been so timid. Even if I have gained power, it hasn't changed. The teenager felt bitter in his heart. He looked through the gaps of those abandoned machines, but he didn't see the boss of the club, that police officer, another victim who was hurt because of his recklessness. Why is he here? How did he find this place? Is this also the arrangement of that place? Mo Xiaofei retreated to the side of those prisoners in horror. He tripped and fell to the ground. What should I do? Am I going to be discovered? Run. Mo Xiaofei was about to get up and leave this place. Instinctively, he wanted to fly up, but he stopped in an instant. The more you use your ability, the faster your body will collapse. I will die. I will die. Mo Xiaofei looked around in panic, then hurriedly rolled on the ground a few times to dirty his body. Finally, he wrapped the scattered chains on the ground around his body and then pretended to be unconscious, lying on the ground. His heart was beating fast. **T. There's really someone here. Hey, you guys, are you okay? Officer Ma walked quickly to the front of the people squatting down to help a guy up. He stretched out his hand to check his pulse. Seeing that he was still alive, he was relieved. "Wake up! Wake up! Wake up!" He shook the people he could touch. Mo Xiaofei listened to the voice and footsteps getting closer to him in horror. The more flustered he was, the harder it was to keep calm. He accidentally touched the chains on his body and made a sound. Officer Ma rushed up instantly, slapping his cheeks hard. Mo Xiaofei had no choice but to open his eyes, saying in horror, Who are you? Finally, one of you is awake." Officer Ma took a deep breath. "Don't panic. I'm a police officer. Although I didn't bring my ID, I'm really a police officer. So I'll save you. Now tell me, who caught you and brought you to this place? Where's that person now?" Mo Xiaofei shook his head, saying that he didn't know anything. Officer Ma was helpless. He knew that some victims couldn't calm down after being overly frightened, so he didn't ask too much. Instead, he took out the phone. "Well, we found a lot of people. Let's not talk about it now. I'll ask the Bureau to send someone to rescue." "That's good. Just treat them as victims and wait to be rescued by the police. As for the explanation, we'll talk about it later." Looking at the old police officer who was still in the hospital gown, Mo Xiaofei opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but found that he was in no position to speak. He lowered his head deeply. Bang! A black shadow suddenly rushed in from the glass window above. It was abnormally strong, abnormally ugly, and abnormally terrifying. Its whole body was covered with disgusting mucus, as if it had been burned or bitten by countless poisonous snakes and centipedes. The moment it appeared, it brought with it a burst of foul smell. The crystal skull seemed to grow naturally on its chest, but it also seemed to be inlaid, which added to the terrifying atmosphere. Seeing such a thing appear in broad daylight, Officer Ma's phone suddenly fell to the ground. He was very frightened. Damn it, what day is it today? July 14th? Officer Ma swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He had been working for more than 20 years and had seen all kinds of ferocious criminals, but he had never seen such a horrible monster. He stepped back in horror. The monster-like thing in front of him suddenly turned its head, and its ghost-like eyes looked directly at him, approaching step by step. Officer Ma picked up an iron bar from the ground in a panic. Feeling the evil and horror brought by this thing, he burst out with the courage to beat it down no matter what it was. The iron bar fiercely smashed down on the head of this ugly thing. If it was an ordinary person, his head would definitely be broken and bleeding, or even a direct fatal blow. However, it had no effect on this ugly thing. Instead, this ugly thing suddenly waved its arm and fiercely swept him away. The old injury had not healed, and this new injury was also serious. Officer Ma suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing himself being swept away by this thing, he really rejoiced that he had made a wise decision to lock up Rin Xiling just now. Officer Ma struggled to stand up. Looking at the panic-stricken student, he roared, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and leave. Do you want to die or not?" Mo Xiaofei quivered, turned around, and fled in fear. After a few steps, he stopped. "Officer, you should go too. This thing is a monster." "What did you call me?" Police officer." "Then why are you still talking nonsense?" Officer Ma picked up another iron bar, gritting his teeth. "If I leave, what about these guys? Do I still know the word police? Don't get in my way. I'll call people, they'll come soon. If you really want to help me, get out of here. Far. Go away." Mo Xiaofei ran out of the workshop in horror. That monster. He couldn't deal with it. He would die. Not worth it. Those people, not worth it. If you continue to use this ability, your body will collapse even faster. Will die. Don't want to die. Do I still know the word police? Will die. Ability. Coward will die. Coward, don't want to die. Coward dad. Have you ever regretted? Will die. Do I still know the word police? If you continue to use this ability, your body will collapse even faster. Will die. Collapse. Instead, it's about what you should do after you put on this piece of clothing. What is the meaning it gives you? Ah, F asterisk CK. I'm really old. And that stupid rule. No gun is allowed when there's no duty. F asterisk CK. F asterisk CK. In just over a minute, Ma Howard felt that it was much harder than doing 10 times of physical training. Spitting out another mouthful of blood, Ma Howard wanted to stand up. I don't admit that I'm old. However, a sudden feeling of dizziness caused his eyelids to become heavy. His body went limp, and he fell into a deep sleep. The fallen police officer didn't know that the ugly thing was walking toward him step by step. The ugly thing opened its bloody mouth. The green light in its eyes flashed, intending to bite the guy who suddenly fell down. Delicious food. It had no sense, nothing. It didn't know where it came from, nor did it have the ability to think about it. It just felt hungry. Fresh blood and meat were constantly tempting it. All of a sudden, its body was hit by something, and it was knocked away. Looking at the food that was far away from its sight, the food that should have been in its mouth, it suddenly went crazy. It pounced on the guy that had bounced away, but it was bounced away again. It didn't know how to think, but it felt that this guy was extremely fragile. It was indeed fragile. After bouncing away the monster twice, Mo Xiaofei was about to spit out a mouthful of blood. His whole body seemed to be protesting against his behavior. But he gritted his teeth, clenching his hands as tightly as possible, enduring the pain in his brain that felt like it would explode at any time, making all the steel and iron pipes around him float up. Mo Xiaofei waved his arms fiercely. Dozens, hundreds of large and small metals like bullets madly shot toward the ugly monster. Chi, chi, hua, hua. The metals hit the ugly thing, just like hitting a wall. It was so hard that there was no way to penetrate it. The monster withstood the impact of a large number of metals, walking toward Mo Xiaofei step by step. Mo Xiaofei suddenly coughed out a mouthful of blood with a splitting headache. Countless voices sounded in his mind, telling him not to care or he would die. The young man suddenly let out a furious roar. All the nearby metals crazily rushed toward the ugly monster just now. However, this time, these pieces of metal were no longer shooting at the monster. Instead, they came one after another, one piece after another, squeezing towards the monster and wrapping around it. The steel plates squeezed the monster's body, while the thick and long steel roots wrapped around the monster's limbs and neck. More and more, more and more, more and more. It was coming closer, 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 closer with great difficulty. Mo Xiaofei's eyes were bloodshot. Blood kept oozing out of his eyes and ears at the same time. He didn't know what was supporting him. He didn't think it was necessary to continue this. However, his body and his will were doing these irrational things. The monster was still approaching. The metal and steel that wrapped around its body had reached a terrifying level. It was like a giant magnet that attracted countless metals. Its neck was clearly twisted, and its hands were clearly twisted. Step by step, step by step. Finally, it stopped and opened its mouth, seemingly making some sort of sound. Boom! The huge metal mountain finally fell to the ground, and the monster couldn't move anymore. Mo Xiaofei knelt down on the ground. Blood flowed out from the 7 orifices on his face, as if he couldn't feel his heartbeat. His body was as weak as when he was beaten to the ground by Brother Quan. Like a flickering light in the wind, it seemed that he had reached the end. Mo Xiaofei suddenly smiled. In the blood, he revealed a smile. It seemed that I could understand your thoughts at that time. Dad, have I become the hero in your heart? Yin 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 PS1. Sorry for the late update, but this chapter of 7,000 words should be enough to make up for it. PS2. Tomorrow is the follow-up content. Chapter 94. Genius 1, Second Remember Love, /go/little. Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. It should be an instinctive fear. Luochio looked at the little butterfly monster clutching the corner of his clothes. Looking at Luochio's gaze, the little butterfly monster released the corner of his clothes at once, looking more uneasy. Coming down from the upper floor of the workshop, Luochio walked to Officer Ma's side. waving his hand to let him float to one side so that he could sit comfortably. Those piles of metal and steel scattered at once, finally revealing the ugly monster's body. Under the cover of numerous steel bars, the monster's body was actually pierced by many steel bars. Even if it couldn't move, or even if it was dead, it could still maintain a standing posture because of these steel bars piercing through its body. As an extra, wasn't a little bit scary? Thinking of this, Boss Luo suddenly looked at the little butterfly monster. Don't worry, this is a prop I need temporarily. It has nothing to do with you. Luo Dance breathed a sigh of relief, then opened her eyes wide, looking around. What are you doing? Is it also to fulfill the customer's request? Customer, do you want to know? If you give us something, maybe we can tell you? Miss Servant Girl, who quietly appeared behind the little butterfly monster, now whispered in the ear of the little butterfly monster. Luo Dance was startled, thinking that there was nothing valuable on her body. She quickly shook her head and retreated to one side. Luochio walked to Mo Xiaofei's side at this time, followed by Yu Yi. She glanced at the teenager who closed his eyes with a smile on the ground, whispering, Master, don't you intend to take away his soul? Miss Servant Girl knew that if those steel bars didn't pierce through the monster quietly outside Mo Xiaofei's ability, Mo Xiaofei wouldn't be able to hold on. That kind of explosive ability would only make Mo Xiaofei's body explode directly, but now he was not completely dead. Her new master was secretly controlling this scene that had once played out. Luochio crouched down and took out a pack of tissues from his clothes. He then picked up a bottle of water that was scattered nearby. He wet the tissue and slowly wiped the blood on Mo Xiaofei's face. The courage that burst out in an instant defeated his own weakness and fear of death. I don't know how to define a hero, but at least it can't be separated from courage. The club boss, who had his own considerations, gently stroked the other side of Mo Xiaofei's face. But is this courage a momentary burst, or can it be sustained? In the future, he will face the same problems and choices. Facing the same situation again, will he explode with unparalleled courage like this time? Putting down the clean Mo Xiaofei gently, Luochio stood up and looked at the servant girl with a smile. It's like a good wine that has been aged and brewed. If time can make the courage hidden in this soul mellow and emit a more charming fragrance. Are you willing to wait? Yu Yi is willing to accompany the master and keep waiting. Love go little say W. Officer Ma just felt that he seemed to have forgotten something, as if he was just distracted. When he opened his eyes, he only saw dozens of people lying on the ground. He looked at the mobile phone in his hand. Damn, when did the screen explode? Have I called someone? Looking at his colleagues who were carrying these people to the ambulance outside, and looking at his sister-in-law, who was walking towards him as if she was going to settle accounts. Officer Ma suddenly felt very confused. This matter was really strange. 2 days later, Officer Ma still couldn't figure out the reason. They didn't know who caught these missing people. It seemed that the appearance of a murderer was very vague. Some said it was a strong man, some said they didn't see clearly, and some said it was a woman. What the hell was a woman? Under the different opinions, they couldn't even make a jigsaw of the criminal's appearance. A group of people in the police station frowned for 2 days. Only Officer Ma, who went out without permission, received strong greetings from the hospital and the leaders. He was almost imprisoned in the ward. Today, he could only read the newspaper out of boredom. Kiki. There was a knock on the door. A teenager with crutches stood in front of Officer Ma's door with a hesitant look. Who are you? Officer Ma was stunned for a moment. His voice was muffled, but he soon remembered that this was one of the people he rescued from the factory that day. It seemed that because of the serious injury, he was directly hospitalized. It's you. Officer Ma frowned based on his impression. I remember your name is Fei. Xiaofei something? Mo Xiaofei. Mo Xiaofei took a deep breath, walking to Officer Ma's bedside with crutches. Officer, do you feel better? Officer Ma smiled, talking about how things were in the past. Now, this little injury could be healed in minutes. So what do you want from me? Mo Xiaofei plucked up his courage. Officer, I'm here to surrender. Surrender? Officer Ma was stunned. Mo Xiaofei took a deep breath, I'm the one who killed those people in the garage. I'm also the one who injured you. I'm also the one who caught so many people and locked them up. Officer Ma. Officer Ma opened his mouth but frowned, stretching out his palm and opening it. Try punching my palm? Mo Xiaofei was taken aback. Hearing this, he punched at the palm. Use more strength. Didn't you drink milk? Officer Ma suddenly said sarcastically. Mo Xiaofei gritted his teeth, punching the palm with all his strength, making a pa sound, but he still couldn't shake the palm. Officer Ma sneered. Look at you, you can't even kill a dog. You can kill people, but can you hurt me? Can you even catch dozens of people? Are you trying to fly to heaven? No, it's really me, Mo Xiaofei hurriedly said. Officer Ma frowned and interrupted, shouting in a deep voice, Boy, I tell you, I don't know what's wrong with you. Did your head get hit by a door when you were caught? But I can tell you honestly, those who were caught with you, if the murderer is really you, they will definitely testify against you. But those guys can't even tell who the murderer is. Also, if you want to admit the crime of hurting me, at least wait until you have six-pack abs instead of the current pork ribs. Mo Xiaofei hurriedly said, but the garage is indeed built by me. Officer Ma said impatiently. Then tell me, how did you kill them? Mo Xiaofei recalled for a while, ignoring the psychokinesis. He didn't know if that place would be unfavorable to the officer in front of him if he exposed the existence of that place. He didn't want to see any sad things happen again. I used my fists, my feet to kick them. Officer Ma frowned. I don't know where you heard it from. Those dead people were indeed beaten before they died, and there were also traces of serious injuries and broken bones. But these weren't the fatal ones. What? Mo Xiaofei gave a start. How could it be? Officer Ma said in a deep voice. Bastard, get out. I have no obligation to explain these to you, and I don't have time to play with you. If you're not clear-headed, go and take a mirror. This is the hospital. It's very convenient. Get out, get out. In fact, Officer Ma, who could get out of bed, directly got off at this moment, pushing Mo Xiaofei out directly. Like driving away a salesman, he waved his hand and said, Get out. After closing the door, Officer Ma muttered, At least you have to tell me. How did those people's hearts disappear? According to the autopsy report of those dead people, the fatal cause was that their hearts were missing. What's wrong with this guy? Officer Ma frowned, unable to understand. What happened in these days? What the F***CK? Mo Xiaofei couldn't understand it either. Although he didn't die, he seemed to have activated some kind of premonition. If there was another outburst of the same intensity, he would definitely be dead. However, those arrested people couldn't explain it clearly. No one remembered the man in the firefighter uniform. Even the scene that happened in the factory, Officer Ma seemed to have completely forgotten it. He was the only one who remembered everything. Was it a dream? Not at all. Looking at the guy who suddenly appeared in the corridor with a fruit basket in his hand, Mo Xiaofei stopped subconsciously, turning around and wanting to escape. But he finally plucked up his courage, walking up with firm steps. Did you do all this? Luo Qiu looked at the clock on the wall and said, It's better to keep some things hidden than to make them public. The factory is not only your personal business. Mo Xiaofei gritted his teeth. The car repair room. Was it also you who hid it? Luo Qiu shook his head. That was another unexpected situation. You're a guest, so it's okay to tell you. Those people were not killed by you. You just seriously injured them at most. However, although they were not killed by you, they wouldn't have faced a worse situation if you didn't injure them. Therefore, you can be regarded as an accomplice. As for what you think, it's not within our service scope. Of course, if you feel guilty and go on the road of self-destruction, we should be happy to see that. After all, you just need to use your ability a few more times. Mo Xiaofei lowered his head. It was not a direct kill, but he was the one who caused it. Mo Xiaofei suddenly raised his head firmly, looking straight into Luo Qiu's eyes without avoiding. I won't use this demonic power again. Even if I use it, I will only use it to save people. Do you expect me to self-destruct because of guilt? No. I will feel guilty. I will feel crazy guilty, but I will never go on the road you expect. I won't be depressed. I will make up for the mistakes I have made and the sins I have committed. Luochio put on a wicked face. Oh, really? Make up for your sins. Is this the reason why you want to survive and not consider those families who are in deep pain because of you? Mo Xiaofei took a deep breath and said, I won't say any reason. I know my sins can't be made up for in this life. But if I self-destruct, it will only increase more sadness. I could survive, at least I could do something. Even if I feel uneasy, even if it will be hard and sad, even if it will take my whole life. He looked at Luochio with an inexplicable brilliance flashing in his eyes. I will also bear these sins and move forward with reverence. Such a look was good. It was much better than the last time they met. He seemed to be able to smell a faint fragrance. What are you looking at? Sub-editor Ren wiped the water stains on her hands while walking out of the toilet. Boss Luo was actually waiting outside the toilet. A child. Yin 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 PS1. Don't ask me why Sir Ma couldn't recognize Mo Xiaofei's voice. Try talking with a gas mask. Oh my god. PS2. I originally planned to write it together with the previous chapter, but it was already 2:30 in the morning. So I had to give up and treat this chapter as the follow-up. As a result, I still couldn't catch up with yesterday's 11:59 p.m. update underscore. Smiley face, 3 angle, underscore. But reasonably speaking, it should be better to read 2 chapters separately. PS3. I don't know if Mo Xiaofei's ending is good or not, or if some people are disgusted. Maybe he should die. But I hope that the one who dies is the arrogant, and ignorant young man who only knows how to avoid problems and is a coward. We all of us have done something wrong more or less. We also hope to be forgiven. What we need is to move forward with this forgiveness in reverence. PS4. The club needs high-quality souls, the better. PS5. I want to protest. I'm really not a PDA maniac. PS6. Besides, I just found out that a book friend sent me a push packet. Sorry, I'm the kind of person who doesn't send red packets, so I basically don't look at red packets. It's an accident to see it today. So today I want to thank these big shots. Cute underscore shoo, let love section go with the wind, heavenly cloud Jing Long, full of lies, masked dancing sky, silent record, powers 67918, incomplete tree, chaotic heart, perfect gold carrot, PS7. Yes, I'm the PS7 who broke through the sky again. For the sake of updating late at night, do you have any recommendation tickets? Of course, the taste of the reward is better equals. Chapter 95. Genius remembers love in 1 second divided by little. This is a wonderful novel for you to read. A few days ago, the police rescued a number of men and women from an abandoned factory in the suburbs. The criminals are still on the run. The police appeal to the public. If you see any suspicious person, please inform us as soon as possible. According to the report, some of the rescued men and women turned themselves into the police. One of the men claimed that he had stolen property from many houses. It was the sound of a radio station on the car. Well, it seems that it's not a bad thing for these people to be arrested. Zhang Qingrui looked at Luo Qiu, who was sitting in the passenger seat. The club's new boss was still wondering why he was here. He looked out of the window and murmured, yes. Why was he here, in Zhang Qingrui's car on the road? That would start from this morning. In view of the lax management of the class, with only 2 people, Boss Luo thought he must have been bewitched to choose such a professional boss. Today, he happily chose to turn left and step into the club. The phone rang. Luochio, you haven't come to school yet? Zhang Qingrui suddenly answered the phone. The last time he came to school should be the time when the singer was shooting the MV in school. It seemed like it had been a while, right? Boss Luo said after a moment of silence. What's the matter? Well, didn't the professor inform you? Boss Luo, who always checked his mobile phone, mainly to see if sub-editor Ren had any strange news or if she suddenly came to his school, said no. Oh, where are you? I'll come to pick you up. Zhang Qingrui said in an indisputable tone. I have something to do. The eldest miss of Guyuzhai, who had said last time that she was going to enjoy her school life, was now driving her yellow Volkswagen Polo attentively, as if she was at peace with the world. Although she was much better than a certain female driver, Boss Luo still took the initiative to ask, "So, where are you going to send me? How does it feel to be suddenly pulled into a car? Let's talk about it later. There's no time to explain now. Get in the car first." That was the explanation he gave when he got on the bus. "It's not about where I'm sending you. It's about where we're going." Zhang Qingrui focused on the windshield. The yellow Volkswagen Polo was driving steadily on the same lane. "The professor told me to go to his house. Theoretically, they shouldn't have called me, right? As the class monitor of this class, I feel that I have an obligation to take care of your credits." Zhang Qingrui said calmly, "It's about time for you to show up in front of the professor. Aren't you afraid that he'll forget that you're a student? There are only 2 people in a class. If they could forget, it would be considered a talent, right? So, you actually don't know why the professor called you? In fact, he simply wanted to find someone to accompany him, to boost his courage, or to pull someone down with him." Zhang Qingrui suddenly glanced at Luoqiu. Perhaps she had read something from his eyes. She knew what he was thinking. Therefore, such a stare was actually a glare. They didn't speak on the way. The paleontology professor, Luoqiu's supervisor, lived in a group of villas built in the early stage of the development of the new city. Small brown porcelain pieces were pasted on the outer wall of the 3-story villa-like building. It was a bit old. On one side of this European-style villa, green creepers grew all over the wall. However, after seeing such a villa, Boss Luo felt that the rumor that the professor just wanted to scam research funds should be discounted. This kind of ancient building was also in the rich area. The research funds must be burning every minute. They pressed the doorbell when they arrived. The paleontology supervisor came out to greet them. The professor was quite surprised to see another person besides Zhang Qingrui. Zhang Qingrui smiled at the professor's astonishment. "Professor," Luoqiu said that he also wanted to visit you. In order to avoid embarrassment, Luoqiu had to nod. Before coming here, he had planned to leave if there was nothing else. However, after coming here, Boss Luo became interested in this kind of villa mixed with Western style. The mottled creepers on the wall were rarely seen. "Since you're here, come in." The professor nodded without saying anything, leading the way for them. They walked through the front yard and into the villa. Luoqiu kept looking at the indoor environment, finally being led to a workroom-like room. The professor didn't say anything, directly explaining the purpose of asking Zhang Qingrui to come here. He pointed at a workbench in the middle of the room. "This is your homework during this period, and it will be counted into the final exam score." This was F***king embarrassing. Knowing that the professor didn't want to call his boss Luo, he just pretended not to hear the latter part of the professor's words, moving his eyes to the workbench. What did he see? Some large and small pieces of mud were scattered around. It was as if they had been part of a huge rock or an even bigger piece of mud in the beginning. But in the mud, he could vaguely see some gray matter. From the exposed tip of the iceberg, it seemed to be some bones. Zhang Qingrui walked around the workbench, suddenly frowning. "Professor, is this a fossil?" It was originally a complete piece, but an accident happened during the transportation. The professor said indifferently, "Your task is to clean up the remains of these fossils. Remember to be careful. Don't break the things inside. After taking them out, you still need to restore them. So this is a long work." Hearing the word long work, Boss Luo didn't feel anything. Instead, he felt that he had finally learned something useful in this field. Putting aside those boring texts and theories, Luoqiu felt that it was very interesting to deal with these bone fragments here. He subconsciously reached out to touch one of the broken pieces of mud. The sunset and wind are sad. The sound is everywhere. Not worrying to whom is a faint, indistinct, elegiac voice suddenly sounded in Luoqiu's ears, flowing into his heart. He was slightly stunned, and when he was about to distinguish it carefully, he suddenly heard the sound of knocking on the door. "Dad, tea and snacks are ready. Let your students have a rest first." They came a long way. It was a graceful woman who appeared in front of the door. She didn't wear any makeup, but her eyes were moving. Luoqiu looked at the woman who appeared in front of him in astonishment. Not to mention her outstanding appearance. Her identity was Qin Shiyu, Yu Sanyang. Yin 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 Yin. Chapter 96. Genius 1. Second, remember love, go divided by little. I'll provide you with wonderful novels to read. The High Jade Emperor's Heart Seal Sutra was a wonderful Taoist classic. Love, go little, say W. Kwanzaa Lu once said, only cultivating one's fate and not one's nature is the first disease of cultivation. Only cultivating one's ancestral nature and not one's alchemy will make it difficult for a nether spirit to become a saint. This was the formula of cultivating one's fate. Of course, it wasn't a classic that could be seen in the market, but the inner part of the High Jade Emperor's Heart Seal Sutra. Tianzi later talked about some of its contents. This was probably what Old Ghost had comprehended from the bits and pieces of information he had collected from his master back then. A lifetime was a reincarnation. Great sorrow and great joy, or a thin stream flowing, was the cultivation of the sincerity of this life. After a stage of cultivation was completed, it was like waking up from a golden millet dream, feeling the past, and then being reborn into the next stage of reincarnation. The body would become young and return to its youth. At the same time, it would forget everything and be reborn into another stage of life. But no matter how miraculous it was impossible to return to the embryo state. The professor was called Qin Fong, who was unmarried. Qin Shiyu was actually an orphan adopted by him. Luoqiu was drinking the tea brewed by Yu Sanyang. Qin Shiyu, who had become a painter in this life, while listening to Qin Fong's detailed requirements for the following work. As for Qin Shiyu, she simply greeted him and went out. She should be going back to her studio. Luoqiu didn't intend to have any interaction with this strange monk. Naturally, he was more interested in the homework assigned by Qin Fong. He didn't know which part of the bone he touched at the beginning belonged to, but because he cared about it, he quietly touched the same place again. A voice like weeping and complaining. Perhaps it wasn't a voice, but something like a thought. Luo Qi felt that he could no longer be classified as an ordinary person. So when he encountered such a wonderful thing, his heart was more or less moved, but his expression was still calm. The evening wind is sad, and the sad voice rises from everywhere. I don't know who I'm talking to. The intermittent voice finally formed a complete sentence. There seems to be only one sentence. Luoqiu felt for a moment and then touched another smaller piece of mud. This time, it was only half a sentence. The mountains and highlands are vast, and there is no time to see you again. Another half sentence. It is hard to describe the feelings between the two. No one knows the resentment in my heart. Luoqiu didn't know how to connect the words. He just wrote down what he heard on a piece of white paper. That's a pretty good regular script. At some point, Zhang Qingrui was standing beside Luoqiu. Zhang's sized strands of hair fell from one side, almost touching the table. Luoqiu was startled. Was he too focused on the thoughts contained in these fossils? I've been doing my homework. Zhang Qingrui smiled. Did you reveal your lazy nature when the professor wasn't around? Basically, he forgot that Zhang Qingrui was here. Luoqiu thought for a while. At the beginning, he seemed to have noticed something. But as he listened to more and more sounds, he was unconsciously immersed in these voices. As if he saw the gobi, the desert, the setting sun, and the lonely wild goose. Someone was holding a musical instrument and crying. Sorry. Luoqiu heaved a sigh. He was about to tidy up the things he casually wrote down. Considering that there were so many scattered bones, if different pieces of mud and bones had different sentences, he couldn't write them all down in a short time. Unexpectedly, eldest Ms. Zhang picked up the piece of paper with the messy sentences written on it. After carefully reading a few sentences, she suddenly asked, "Why are you randomly writing Hu Jia 18 beats here?" It was indeed very strange. Facing these fossils, he was actually leisurely writing a few words of the Hu Jia's 18 beats. Hu Jia 18 beats? Luoqiu was stunned and asked curiously, "Are you sure?" Zhang Qingrui suddenly frowned. It shouldn't be wrong. My grandmother had some attainments in ancient zither. When I was little, I could often hear her playing Hu Jia 18 beats. Out of curiosity, I recited its original text. Luoqiu nodded. He suddenly stood up and bent down toward the pile of mud and stones with the tools beside him. He looked just like a good student who was concentrating on his homework. Zhang Qingrui gave a start. The next second, Professor Qin Fong pushed the door open and walked in while reading some documents. Ms. Zhang had a bad feeling. This Luochio was really smart. She smiled and put down the paper in her hand. Then, she reached out and touched one of the small pieces of mud. Suddenly, she felt a slight electric shock, which made her fingertips shrink slightly. But when she tried to feel it again, there was no difference. It was probably just static electricity. Yusha, you're not young anymore. Isn't it time to consider getting married? Your dad and I are very worried about you. Guo Yushuo listened to his mother's call from his hometown with a little annoyance, casually replying. But his eyes never left his girlfriend for a moment. He found that he couldn't take his eyes off her anymore. It was a brand new image. He was no longer rustic, and his entire body began to emit a charming aura. His girlfriend, who was drawing on the drawing board by the window, turned her head and smiled at him. Guo Yushua's annoyance seemed to be cleared away at once. He felt the heartbeat and satisfaction that he hadn't felt for a long time. His girlfriend was just as he wished. She even quit her job at the gas station and enrolled in a university's advanced course. Although she said it was hard to study again, she smiled sweetly and said it was very fulfilling. She had never felt so fulfilled before. His girlfriend, who didn't like to watch political news, started to watch such programs with him, saying she was interested in them. She started to discuss some issues with him. We were no longer monotonous here. We talked about not only trivial things. We talked about movies and the background of the magician and the monster on the island in Tempest. We listened to the string serenade in C major and danced around the house. When it was quiet at night, we hugged each other by the window, looking at the city lights. Oh, I ran out of paints. Guiyushua smiled. He couldn't restrain his love for his girlfriend. He quickly put on his coat and said, "It doesn't matter. I'll buy it for you right away. In that case, I'll cook and wait for you. Today, I want to try making red wine steak." But Guiyushua nodded with a smile. "Let's go to the place where I bought painting tools last time." He suddenly had a strange idea. Was that place actually heaven? Just by using one of his kidneys, he was able to make his girlfriend so perfect. Guiyushua drove away from the apartment's underground garage in a good mood. After he went out, a black car parked by the road slowly followed him. Chapter 97. Genius remembers love in 1 second divided by little. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. As the saying goes, sleepy in spring, sleepy in autumn, and sleepy in summer. This kind of habit seemed to be suitable for demons as well. At this moment, the little butterfly monster stretched herself and let out a comfortable sound. This place was not bad. There was a lot of food suitable for her. There was a variety of food, and one change a day was enough for her to eat for a whole year. The only bad thing was that she needed to pay more attention during the day, because there would be a lot of tourists here during the day. This was actually a botanical garden in the city. Ever since he was completely ignored by a certain terrifying boss and miss made in the factory that day, the young monster, who was afraid that he would encounter something strange when he returned to the mountains, was once again homeless. The little butterfly monster turned into a butterfly, flying above the night sky of the city. After a long time, she smelled the fragrance of flowers and came to this place. Grandpa Tree Monster said that she should either stay away from human beings or integrate into human society. Although the young butterfly demon felt that it was very free in the mountains, she still wanted to see the outside world. But how can I integrate into human society? The little butterfly monster looked at the leaves of the mulberry tree above her head in confusion. At this moment, Luo Dance was holding a small piece of fresh green and hard branch from the tree. She had been thinking about this problem for a whole day while sucking on the broken part of one end. The milky white sap was quickly sucked up. Luo Dance subconsciously licked her lips and swallowed some of the branch. She gently bit it and rolled it with the tip of her tongue. This kind of delicious taste will appear again. At this time, the little butterfly monster felt that her leg was rubbed by something, sending a strange feeling of numbness. She subconsciously lowered her head to look, only to see a green vine wriggling where she was sitting. Before she had time to react, the vine on the ground began to grow crazily and quickly rolled up to her legs and waist. Wow! The little butterfly monster screamed in panic. Her whole body had been tied up by these vines, and then she was hung upside down on the tree. Her hair hung down straight, and her sight was completely inverted. Luo Dance tried to struggle a few times, but found that the more she struggled, the more she was tied up. Such a small monster, suddenly, a pair of dark blue denim pants appeared in his line of sight. They were straight, slim, and slender. Luo Dance had no time to think about it, as her body had been straightened by those vines. Valiant short hair, a pair of brown large-framed sunglasses, a simple t-shirt with blue and white stripes, and an indifferent but highly pure demonic aura that frightened Luo Dance. Sister, sister, who are you? Luo Dance murmured. This kind of demonic aura that was terrifyingly pure made her instinctively fearful. Her body stiffened, and she was afraid that even without the entangling vines, she would not be able to move. I don't know her age, but at least she looks young, demon. He gently pressed down the brown sunglasses on his face and suddenly walked in front of the little butterfly demon. He reached out and gently pinched her chin, casually moving it left and right. So it's a little butterfly. Well, golden-banded swallowtail butterfly. It turns out that it hasn't gone extinct. The little butterfly monster's eyes shrank at once. The woman's next sentence was, "It should be good to make a specimen." Ah, Luo Dance trembled all of a sudden. At the very least, the young butterfly monster still knew what the specimen was. Luo Dance seemed to see butterflies being put on the chopping board and sealed in the glass frame forever. Her face turned pale with fright. Unexpectedly, this woman with a thin and horrible demonic aura suddenly stretched out her hand and flicked her forehead, chuckling, "I lied to you." The tight vines loosened at once, and the little butterfly monster sat on the ground softly. "My name is Long Shiruo. And you?" "Dance, Luo Dance." "Sir, this is the paint you want." Chinchiyu knew that she had a good memory since she was a child. It was hard to forget people she had seen once. Maybe it was a gift from God. She could even reach the level of photographic memory. But she didn't like to show off, so she didn't tell anyone about her talent. She seemed to be only interested in painting in her life. Guiyu Shuo. If she remembered correctly, this guest's name was Guiyu Shuo. "Ah, thank you." Guiyu Shuo was casually looking at the works in the studio while waiting. At this moment, he stretched out his hand with a smile and received the paint Chinchiyu had packed. Chinchiyu suddenly said with a smile, "If the paint is completely dried, it will be very difficult to clean." Guiyu Shuo gave start. Chinchiyu pointed at his clothes and wrist. When did it stick?" Guiyu Shuo gave a start, then smiled. "Thanks for reminding me." He still remembered his girlfriend at home, so he didn't intend to say anything more, even if this young female boss of the studio was a woman of high quality. "My girlfriend is starting to become perfect, and I only love her, right? By the way, Sir's girlfriend seems to be very interested in painting. She has used up the paint last time in just a few days." "Yes," Guiyu Shuo said proudly. "She should have some talent, right? Next time, I'll bring her works to you and let you comment on them." Chinchiyu nodded. Although it was better to get professional guidance for painting than to fumble by oneself, it was indeed a bit annoying to say such words, like promoting, quickly pay the tuition fee and attend the class, and so on. After Guiyu Shuo left with the stuff, a man came in after a while and approached Chinchiyu. "Miss, may I ask what he bought just now?" "You are?" "Oh, well, I'm his colleague. I happened to pass by and saw it, so I want to ask." Although Chinchiyu felt strange in her heart, she didn't say anything, but simply said, "Just some paint, nothing." The man kept silent for a while, then suddenly muttered, "Paint? I remember he doesn't know how to paint. He seems to have bought it for his girlfriend." Chinchiyu stopped the topic here. "Sir, if you're the friend of that gentleman just now, you should ask him more clearly." The man nodded, thoughtfully leaving the studio. There was a naked corpse lying on the table, which seemed to have been well dissected. Last time it was in the laboratory of a pharmaceutical factory. This time it was in the autopsy room. Boss Luo wasn't a timid person, but when he saw Miss Maid wearing white rubber gloves and holding a scalpel stained with some liquid, he still felt disgusted. It should be an ancient method of refining corpse in Nanyang. You put the scalpel on the plate. The corpse lying on the table was actually the one they got from the factory a few days ago. Since then, the monster's corpse showed some disgusting signs of decay. But these pieces of rotten flesh didn't damage the monster's real origin. Instead, after the decay, it revealed its original appearance. It was the psychic who should have been arrested and sent to prison earlier. How did this guy become like this? Luochio frowned. This time, Miss Maid, who also put on the medical examiner's uniform without permission, said helplessly, "It's just a small matter, and I didn't want to make you worry, but it seems that there's still a mistake." Luochio gave a start. Yi told him about the psychic, but omitted the matter of Black Soul number 18. Ghost King Tongtian intended to avenge his apprentice, so he brought about his own death. Yi has already killed him, but I didn't expect that he refined the corpse elsewhere. Refining this kind of corpse seems to require a special kind of insect. It needs the heart of a living person to grow. I'm afraid that when the Ghost King Tongtian was looking for food, he happened to find those guys lying in the garage. That's why he made the first move. It's enough for Uncle Ma's group to be busy. Luochio shook his head. This would probably become an unsolved case in the end. Luochio looked at the crystal skull taken out from the psychic's corpse. So it's this thing that Yang Taizi said to exchange for the second part of the cultivation method last time. It seemed that he was destined to meet Bones today. During the day, he was still dealing with another set of bones in Professor Qin Fong's home. But who made this crystal skull? Reaching out to hold this crystal skull, Luochio couldn't help but feel a little disappointed when he touched another set of bones during the day. But he soon thought of something. If there was a skull, would there be other parts? A whole set of crystal bones? At this moment, pulling his thoughts away from this crystal skull, Luochio glanced at Yu Yi, who was standing quietly beside him. Looking at this silent and slightly lowered head, as if she had done something wrong and was waiting for her master to punish her, Luochio had to say softly, "Pack up and go back? Tonight? Well, vegetarian food is okay." "Master," Luochio smiled, "you solved some troubles for me in a place I didn't know. If you still feel that you didn't do a good job and want to blame me, you probably won't be able to live well in the future, right?" 8:30 p.m. Luochio had to stop eating while eating the vegetarian dishes that Miss Maid carefully cooked. Miss Maid, who seemed to be happier today, hurriedly took a napkin and wiped the traces around Boss Luo's mouth considerately. Although it felt really good, but if he continued indulging in this way, would he completely degenerate into a handicapped person? Boss Luo once again welcomed Guiyu Shuo as a guest. Well, the third time. Chapter 98. Genius 1, Second Remember Love, Go/Small. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. So, you suspect that your girlfriend is having an affair behind her back, right? Luochio was looking at Guiyu Shuo, saying what he wanted to hear. No. I won't suspect her. Guiyu Shuo denied himself. He couldn't be sure. It's just that the temptation of the outside world is too great. She has become so outstanding again. The reason was, the customer found that a suspicious man was often found downstairs. Sometimes he would even wander downstairs in the middle of the night and wouldn't leave. He said that his girlfriend's eyes would occasionally turn to the direction of the strange man, as if she vaguely knew that someone was watching. Luochio said indifferently, "If you just want to know the answer, asking the other party should be the fastest choice." Guiyu Shuo shook his head. "Today that guy followed me again. He has been following me since I left home to buy things. He is still downstairs." Luochio looked at Guiyu Shuo's expression, saying softly, "Customer, may I ask what you want this time?" Guiyu Shuo lowered his head, pondering. After a moment, he took a deep breath. "She has become outstanding. She will only be more outstanding in the future. Even if one is driven away, there will be a second one, and a third one." "That's a correct idea." Luochio nodded. Guiyu Shuo suddenly said, "The key is still herself." His eyes flashed with some illusory, fanatical, and even distorted things. The existence of the club and the hidden wonderful atmosphere in the lobby that induced people's desires were crazily magnified at this moment. Gritting his teeth, Guiyu said seriously, I want her to only love me and never change her mind. Even if she hasn't changed her mind now, it's hard to say in the future. So I need a guarantee. Are you sure? Luochio suddenly said, Customer, it's much more difficult to control people's hearts than a desire to improve. Especially love is the most sincere feeling. What you need to maintain is not a simple matter. Listening to such words, Guiyu Shuo, who came here for the third time, naturally understood what was going to happen next. As a member of the financial world, he was well aware of such tricks. From the beginning, they lured customers with small profits or losses. This time Guiyu Shuo's lips trembled slightly, and he gritted his teeth. If one of my eyes isn't enough, I can add another ear. Looking at the indifferent look of the boss in front of him, Guiyu Shuo gritted his teeth again and said, 1 year of life, 2 years of life, 5 years of life. The club's new boss suddenly knocked on the table and said softly, No, 1 month is enough. So little? Guiyu Shuo was stunned. He stared at the man in the clown mask in disbelief. Was there a devil's grin or an angel's grin behind this? Luochio didn't answer this question. He just waved his arm, and an ancient scroll unfurled in front of Guiyu Shuo. Guess, please. It was true. Guiyu Shuo, who had completed 2 transactions, instantly dispelled his doubts when the scroll was unfurled. Taking a deep breath, Guiyu Shuo placed his palm on the parchment. The moment he did so, he felt a sense of comfort. From now on, she belongs to me only. Oh, guest, since she only loves you, Luochio suddenly said, why don't you bring her out and let others see how excellent she is? If she's not recognized by others, she'll be too lonely. Guiyu Shuo was stunned, and then he revealed a happy expression. This is a good idea. It's really a good idea. She wondered how those rich ladies and ladies who used to look down on her would feel ashamed of themselves after seeing such an excellent girl. After Guiyu Shuo left, Yi suddenly said, Master, the dishes are cold. Let me make them again. Luochio shook his head, took off his mask, and sat back at the table, saying, That's good. After dinner, Luochio teleported to the library of the university alone. Through tech search, he quietly took out several documents from the library, and a video and audio material of the return of Wenji. Touching her stomach, she really couldn't. After eating the chicken leg rice of this freezer for nearly a week, sub-editor Rin felt that both her tongue and stomach were protesting. She really missed the millet porridge made by Luochio with fulling pickled mustard. Boss, the bill. Another day's work was useless. Sub-editor Rin didn't go downstairs for so many days. She really admired the patience of this bodyguard. Unexpectedly, when she just turned the corner and went to a nearby parking lot, sub-editor Rin suddenly felt that her arm was caught by something, and then she was suddenly pulled into a dark alley. She instinctively wanted to resist. In fact, at the moment when she was suddenly pulled in, sub-editor Rin had already resisted and kicked fiercely. Sub-editor Rin, who had won the gold medal of the Taekwondo competition in the university, didn't give up these skills these years. With a sound of pa, the black figure in front of her stepped back 2 steps. Obviously, he was caught off guard, but obviously, he was able to defend himself. Sister-in-law is still so cruel. Suddenly, a bitter voice came from the dark. Yiyan. Rin Xiling looked at the man who appeared in front of her with surprise. Wearing a black windbreaker, he looked like a walker in the dark. Obviously, he was a lot older than her, but in these years, he seemed to have grown in reverse. Obviously, he was almost 40 years old, but looked like 28 or 29 years old. Why are you here? Rin Xiling frowned. Suddenly, Yian asked, Sister-in-law, have you been spying on the people in one of the suites in that building recently? Rin Xiling gave a start. How do you know? You come with me. Yian smiled. Then, he muttered to himself and looked left and right. His heart was filled with doubts. At that moment, he seemed to have sensed something dangerous, but it disappeared all of a sudden. This was a room near the road in a unit of a nearby building. The windows in the room were covered with curtains. However, the furnishings in the room surprised Rin Xiling. High-power binoculars, eavesdroppers, notebooks. In addition, there were 7 or 8 used lunchboxes piled up. Rin Xiling pinched her nose in an instant. Yiyan shrugged. Don't pay too much attention to the environment. Men are more or less like this. Ren Xiling immediately retorted, F***CK? Who said that? Didn't you see my Luochio tidy things up neatly and clean? I have no interest in arguing with you. A person who spoils little Luo. Ian shook his head, pulling Ren Xiling to the binoculars. Have a look. Ren Xiling subconsciously looked towards the binoculars. She saw the end of the focal point. The bodyguard, King Kong. At this time, King Kong was also close to binoculars. From the lens and angle, it seemed to be, did you see? The guy's been monitoring you all the time. Yin said indifferently, like you can't wait until the end of time. F***CK. Sub-editor Run gritted her teeth, stamping her feet, saying fiercely, I'm going to send him a box of sanitary pads. Yin, this policeman from Lyon, France, suddenly pinched his eyebrows. He didn't want to hear it. Yin PS1. Please vote. Please give me a tip. Chapter 99. Genius 1, Second Remember Love, Go/Small. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. So, you suspect that your girlfriend is having an affair behind her back, right? Luochio was looking at Gui Yushua, saying what he wanted to hear. No. I won't suspect her. Gui Yushua denied himself. He couldn't be sure. It's just that the temptation of the outside world is too great. She has become so outstanding again. The reason was, the customer found that a suspicious man was often found downstairs. Sometimes he would even wander downstairs in the middle of the night and wouldn't leave. He said that his girlfriend's eyes would occasionally turn to the direction of the strange man, as if she vaguely knew that someone was watching. Luochio said indifferently, if you just want to know the answer, asking the other party should be the fastest choice. Gua Yushua shook his head. Today, that guy followed me again. He has been following me since I left home to buy things. He's still downstairs. Luochio looked at Gui Yushua's expression, saying softly, Customer, may I ask what you want this time? Gui Yushua lowered his head, pondering. After a moment, he took a deep breath. She has become outstanding. She will only be more outstanding in the future. Even if one is driven away, there will be a second one and a third one. That's a correct idea. Luochio nodded. Guo suddenly said, the key is still herself. His eyes flashed with some illusory, fanatical, and even distorted things. The existence of the club and the hidden wonderful atmosphere in the lobby that induced people's desires were crazily magnified at this moment. Gritting his teeth, Guishua said seriously, I want her to only love me and never change her mind. Even if she hasn't changed her mind now, it's hard to say in the future. So I need a guarantee. Are you sure? Luochio suddenly said, Customer, it's much more difficult to control people's hearts than a desire to improve. Especially love is the most sincere feeling. What you need to maintain is not a simple matter. Listening to such words, Gua Yushua, who came here for the third time, naturally understood what was going to happen next. As a member of the financial world, he was well aware of such tricks. From the beginning, they lured customers with small profits or losses. This time, Yushua's lips trembled slightly, and he gritted his teeth. If one of my eyes isn't enough, I can add on the other ear. Looking at the indifferent look of the boss in front of him, Guiyushua gritted his teeth again and said, 1 year of life, 2 years of life, 5 years of life. The club's new boss suddenly knocked on the table and said softly, No, 1 month is enough. So little? Guiyushua was stunned. He stared at the man in the clown mask in disbelief. Was there a devil's grin or an angel's grin behind this? Luochio didn't answer this question. He just waved his arm, and an ancient scroll unfurled in front of Guiyushua. Guess, please. It was true. Guiyushua, who had completed 2 transactions, instantly dispelled his doubts when the scroll was unfurled. Taking a deep breath, Guiyushua placed his palm on the parchment. The moment he did so, he felt a sense of comfort. From now on, she only belongs to me. By the way, guest, since she only loves you, Luochio suddenly said, why don't you bring her out and let others see how excellent she is? If she's not recognized by others, she'll be too lonely. Guiyushua was stunned, and then he revealed a happy expression. This is a good idea. It's really a good idea. She wondered how those rich ladies and ladies who used to look down on her would feel ashamed of themselves after seeing such an excellent girl. After Guayusha left, Yi suddenly said, "Master, the dishes are cold. Let me cook them again." Luochio shook his head, took off the mask, and sat back at the table, saying, "That's good." After dinner, Luochio teleported to the library of the university alone. Through text search, he quietly took out several documents from the library and a video and audio material of the return of Wenji. Touching her stomach, she really couldn't. After eating the chicken leg rice of this freezer for nearly a week, sub-editor Rin felt that both her tongue and stomach were protesting. She really missed the millet porridge made by Luochio with fulling pickled mustard. Boss, the bill. Another day of useless work. Sub-editor Rin admired the patience of this Mr. Bodyguard who didn't go downstairs for so many days. Unexpectedly, when she just turned the corner and went to a nearby parking lot, sub-editor Rin suddenly felt that her arm was caught by something, and then she was suddenly pulled into a dark alley. She instinctively wanted to resist. In fact, at the moment when she was suddenly pulled in, sub-editor Rin had already resisted and kicked out fiercely. Sub-editor Rin, who had won the gold medal of the Taekwondo competition in the university, had not given up these skills these years. With a sound of "pa," the black figure in front of her fiercely stepped back 2 steps. Obviously, he was also caught off guard, but obviously he defended himself. "Sister-in-law, you're still so cruel." Suddenly, a wry voice came from the dark shadow. "Yin." Rin Xiling looked at the man who appeared in front of her in surprise. Wearing a black windbreaker, he looked like a walker in the dark. Obviously, he was a lot older than her, but in these years, he seemed to have grown in reverse. Obviously, he was almost 40 years old, but he looked like 28 or 29 years old. "Why are you here?" Rin Xiling frowned. At this moment, Yin suddenly said, "Sister-in-law, are you monitoring the people in a suite in that building recently?" Rin Xiling gave a start. "How do you know?" "You come with me." Yin smiled. Then, he muttered to himself and looked left and right. His heart was filled with doubts. In that instant, he felt as if he had sensed something dangerous, but disappeared all of a sudden. This was a room near the road in a unit of a nearby building. The windows in the room were covered with curtains. However, the furnishings in the room made Rin Xiling very surprised. High-power binoculars, eavesdroppers, notebooks. In addition, there were 7 or 8 used lunchboxes piled up. Rin Xiling instantly pinched her nose. Yi Yin shrugged. "Don't be too picky about the environment. Men are almost like this." Rin Xiling immediately retorted, "Damn. Who said that? Didn't you see my Luochio tidy things up neatly and clean? I have no interest in arguing with you. A person who spoils little Luo." Yin shook his head, pulling Rin Xiling to the binoculars. "Have a look." Rin Xiling subconsciously looked towards the binoculars. She saw the end of the focal point. The bodyguard, King Kong. At this time, King Kong was also close to a binoculars. From the direction of the lens and angle, it seemed to be, "Did you see? The guy's been monitoring you." Yi Yin said indifferently, "Like you can't wait until the end of time." F***CK. Sub-editor Run gritted her teeth, stamping her feet, saying fiercely, "I'll send him a box of sanitary pads." Yi Yin, this policeman from Lyon, France, suddenly pinched his eyebrows. He didn't want to hear it. Yin PS1. Please vote for me. Please give me a tip. PS2. 9 p.m. Second update. Chapter 100. Genius remembers love in 1 second divided by small. Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Although I don't know why you've been paying attention to this person recently, I hope you better not get involved. Ian suddenly said seriously. Looking at the equipment in the dark room again, Ren Xiling frowned with the special tactile sense of a reporter. Ian, tell me honestly, the reason why you came back this time is actually related to King Kong and the vegetative Lin Gong, and even Heaven's Shadow Entertainment, right? Do you really want to know? Ian suddenly asked. Ren Xiling nodded. Ian said again, I can tell you something, but you have to promise me that you won't follow up on this matter anymore. I know you always like to take verbal promises as nonsense, but if you get involved this time, You may bring danger to the people around you. I think you know how to control yourself. What do you mean? Ren Xiling's face couldn't help but become more dignified. Yi Yin sighed, sitting down and saying, I can't tell you the details. In the past 1 or 2 years, we've been tracking down a very large criminal group. According to the current information, this group has been involved in organ trafficking and drug trade. This was not a joke. Ren Xiling calmly analyzed Yi Yan's words. According to our information, this group may have made some deals with Heaven's Shadow Entertainment. Yi Yan said with consideration, we estimate that they use Heaven's Shadow Entertainment's artists to carry out illegal organ trafficking and even drug trafficking when they go out to walk on the stage or carry out business activities. Ren Xiling gave a start. Her face suddenly changed. If she was afraid that she finally understood the source of her friend Tu Jiaya's drug addiction. It's a pity that the boss of Heaven's Shadow Entertainment had such an accident when we found this out. Yi Yan sighed and said, I'm afraid this lead is broken, but it's not completely broken. King Kong. Yi Yan nodded. Yes, on the surface, this guy is an employee of a security company hired by Heaven's Shadow Entertainment. But we found records of his plastic surgery. Before the surgery, he was actually a freelance mercenary active in the Middle East. Love, go little say, Ku at this point. Yi Yan looked at Ren Xiling seriously and said, he obviously knows that you're following him, but he hasn't done anything yet. It's very likely that it's because you're not a threat to him. But obviously, he didn't want to get into trouble. But once this kind of person's bottom line is crossed, think about it. A person who once leaped from the Middle East, what will happen when he is furious? Ren Xiling was silent. Yi Yan said again, so put away your curiosity this time. Our group of brothers swore in front of Brother Luo's grave that we would never let little Luo Chio get hurt in this lifetime. Right? Okay. Ren Xiling nodded. I won't interfere in this matter anymore. But there is one thing I hope you can help me pay attention to. Say it. Yi Yan didn't mind Ren Xiling's request at this time. He knew that this woman had made up her mind. He and his group of brothers all understood that this woman valued the young man who just started her life more than anything else. I have a friend, Tu Jiaya. She disappeared recently. Hu Qin, Suona, Yuaqin, and Hai Di, lingering with grief. Beijing accent. It's time for me to be infinitely attached to Qianglu. When she just returned home, sub-editor Run was shocked to find herself in a wonderful environment, which was like noise to her. She knew that her good son liked music, and also knew that Luochio also had a period of curiosity when he was young and played with musical instruments. The problem was, why did he start to turn to the field of traditional culture? Was her understanding of Luochio outdated? Generation gap? Was there a generation gap? She walked quickly to the sofa. At this moment, the boss of a club had obviously fallen asleep. Ren Xiling glanced at the video box on the coffee table with the words Return of Wenji written on it and frowned. She stretched out her hand and poked Luochio's face gently. Looking at the slight dent on his face, sub-editor Ren suddenly felt so happy, as if the fatigue of the day had disappeared. How could he be so cute? What are you doing? Unexpectedly, Boss Luo suddenly opened his eyes. Ren Xiling simply sat down and said arrogantly, What's wrong? Is there a problem with me poking my son's face? Finding that there was no problem in theory, Boss Luo heaved a sigh of relief. He pinched his eyebrows and watched the figure walking on the TV screen. Sure enough, no matter how interested he was defeated in this silent rhythm. Just as he was reading, he was so tired that he fell asleep. Luochio turned off the TV, looking at the time. You're early tonight, Ren Xiling said with a smile. Because I thought that you would be bored, lonely, and intolerable at home alone. I thought that you would use a lot of tissue paper and so on. F***CK. Why are you looking at me like I'm an idiot? You look like an idiot. Ren Xiling's mother suddenly made a gesture of knocking on his head, but she was reluctant to knock. Then she touched her stomach. Baby, I'm hungry. There are instant noodles on the cabinet. I want to eat millet porridge. It's best if it's sticky and thick. There are instant noodles on the cabinet. Yes, with pickled mustard. There are instant noodles on the cabinet. Well, a dish of fried noodles is also good. Can I add some shredded ham to make fried noodles with 3 shredded noodles? Boss Luo felt there was no need to continue the conversation. He sighed, getting up and walking to the kitchen. It seemed to be like this all these years. It's either me or you. Most of the time, it was Luochio who did the cooking. By the way, are you free this weekend? Are you still tutoring that little girl? In the evening? Boss Luo, who was eating millet, gave a start. He almost forgot that there was a non-existent student, so he answered casually, sometimes. What's up? Family day, family day. Ren Xiling ran into the kitchen, touching Luochio's head. I'll take you to the zoo on Sunday, okay? You don't like it? How about the botanical garden? The amusement park is also okay. So Boss Luo put the calamity in sub-editor Ren's hands. What's up? There are instant noodles on the cabinet. Sir, you're here again. Chin-Chu looked at this man who should have been here the day before yesterday. Did you use up the paint again? No. Guo Yusha shook his head and carefully took out a roll of paper. It's like this. My girlfriend and I both like this painting very much, so we want to frame it. Can I trouble you? No problem. Chin-Chu smiled, but will take 1 or 2 days. It doesn't matter, I'll come back in 2 days. Guo nodded, then looked at the watch on his wrist. I'm in a hurry. There's a banquet in the evening, and I need to choose the dress, so I can't talk more. After seeing Guo Yushuo leave, Chin-Chu returned to the table and sat down. She slowly unrolled the rolled drawing paper, but opened her mouth. She had never seen such a painting. Being infatuated with painting and being able to feel the emotions and attitude that the painter wanted to express were probably the qualities that a qualified painter should have. I've never seen such a painting. She couldn't help staring at it blankly. Everlasting Heart Hotel, a hotel under the Everlasting Heart Group. Due to the large capital investment, everything here was equipped according to the highest level. Are you nervous? In the open-air parking outside the banquet hall, Guo Yushuo looked at his girlfriend who was sitting in the passenger seat, asking gently. He felt the passionate love emitted from his girlfriend's eyes all the time, feeling it was the most wonderful thing in the world. His girlfriend shook her head slightly, revealing a faint smile. As if she was the most brilliant jewel in the world, Guo Yushuo couldn't help kissing her on the lips. Aren't you afraid of being late? His girlfriend chuckled. Of course not, Guo Yushuo said proudly. You'll be the most dazzling princess tonight. Everyone in the banquet hall should be waiting for your arrival. You're such a sweet talker. I'm serious. Guo hurriedly opened the door, then trotted to the other side of the car, opening the door and directly hugging his girlfriend from the driver's seat. What are you doing? His girlfriend asked coyly and shyly. Since you're a princess, of course you should enter as a princess. Guo Yushuo smiled faintly. Listen to me. You'll be the center of attention. Feeling the stronger love in his girlfriend's eyes, feeling the touch of her gently leaning on his chest, Guo Yushuo gazed at her, walking towards the entrance of the banquet hall. This man is so strange. He actually walked over with a woman in his arms. At the signing place, some guests, some hostesses, and the waiters were all stunned. How could he enter the banquet hall like this? Guo Yushuo? Suddenly, a woman who was acting as the company's etiquette for today's banquet recognized him. She frowned and looked at the banquet, then quickly walked up to Guo Yushuo. Guo Yushuo, what are you doing here? Attending the banquet. This. His former colleague frowned, looking at the woman in his arms. Guo Yushuo, I know you must be dissatisfied with the company's decision to lay you off a few months ago, but you'd better not make trouble here, right? You're so strange. Really? Even the chairman is here? Good, I have to go in quickly. Guo Yushuo walked 2 steps forward as if he didn't hear her. His former colleague was stunned. This guy seems a bit abnormal. She quickly reached out and grabbed Guo Yushuo's arm. Guo Yushuo, you're not invited here. Actually, you can't go in. Oh, right? How could I forget to sign in? Wen, wait for me here. Guo Yushuo put his girlfriend down. I'll come over after signing. He walked straight to the place where the lot was drawn. Before the female colleague could stop him, the woman who was put down suddenly walked towards her. She subconsciously caught it, but at this moment, she saw the woman's body was twisted abnormally. The female colleague quickly supported her, then suddenly screamed in horror. Pale, rotten, this is actually a corpse. Yin PS1. Seems to be a few minutes late. PS2. But I still want to recommend, collect, and reward. Chapter 101. Genius remembers love in 1 second / little. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Because she was too frightened, the female colleague in the pink and purple evening dress instinctively pushed the body away and screamed again. The red dress rolled on the ground a few times. A lot of hair on the head fell off because of this. It looked at the night sky above the bright lights of dozens of floors. It was indeed a rotten body. The guests at the door, the other hostess, and the waiters at the 2 doors were all pale with fright at this moment. The ladies followed the female colleague to the end and screamed as well. As if he didn't hear the screams of the people around him, Guayusha assigned his name on the register and quickly walked to the body in the red evening dress and squatted down. Wenwen, why are you so careless? Did you fall? Guayusha showed a painful expression. It's okay, just a light touch. Listening to his girlfriend's soft words, Guayusha smiled again. Then let's go in, let them see your most beautiful self. The female colleague on the ground didn't dare to make a sound. She subconsciously covered her mouth. She watched Guayusha talking to the body and then holding it up again with a happy smile on his face. It was as if a nightmare was playing out. At this time, Guayusha lowered his head, looking at the body in his arms. He said something while walking to the entrance of the banquet hall. It was just a few steps, but for those who were frightened, it was extremely long. They instinctively leaned on the ladder, curling up into a ball. Quick! Someone come here. Call the police. Call the police. If an obviously mentally unstable person appeared in front of you with a corpse in his arms, what would be your first reaction? Fear. Fear? Worry? Afraid that this madman would suddenly go crazy and do something even more horrible? But in short, you wouldn't bravely stop him. This guy was still talking to himself. Wenwen, look, they're all looking at you. The lighting here is the best match with this necklace. Ah, that person is also wearing the same red dress as you, but not as beautiful as you. Let's go and say hello to the chairman. The chairman of the company saw a person walking towards him with a body in his arms. He was so scared that his face changed dramatically, and he stepped back step by step. Quick, someone stop this guy. You go. We're the security guards. We're the security guards of the hotel. But that body, I won't touch it. Call the police. Call the police, so. The elites and rich ladies who were dressed in expensive gowns were naturally unwilling to come into contact with such filthy, dirty, and horrifying things. Not to mention a madman who could go crazy at any time. A madman who came in with a corpse? It's so strange. Wenwen, don't you think they are strange? I know. They don't dare to come close to you. It's because you're too beautiful that they feel ashamed of their own inferiority. That must be it. Don't say it. It's so embarrassing. Hearing his girlfriend's voice, Guayusha gave up the idea of greeting others. Instead, he carried his girlfriend to a chair and sat her down. Wenwen, your hair is messy. Let me tidy it up for you. Guayusha smiled. He reached out his hand and gently combed the fluffy, dry, and yellow hair with his fingertips. He tried again and again, only to find that his fingers had messed up a mass of black stuff. Your hair is dirty. Let me tidy it up for you. Guayusha smiled and gently pressed his hands on his girlfriend's head, and then he started to move it. The yellow and withered hair fell off easily. Guayusha moved it again and again until all the strands of hair fell off. It's done. You are so beautiful. He seemed to be unable to control himself and kissed his girlfriend's forehead softly. Vomit among the guests. When they saw this scene, they saw that the hair was peeled off, revealing even more rotten parts and even more horrifying faces. When they saw the way this man kissed the corpse, they couldn't bear the effects of the alcohol they had ingested and immediately vomited. It seems that someone is drunk. It's really bad. Guayusha looked at the vomiting person and revealed a slight smile. He then said, Wenwen, are you hungry? As he spoke, he picked up a knife and fork from the dining table and picked up a piece of sirloin steak that was placed further away. He began to cut it and fed it to his girlfriend one small piece at a time. Let me help you. Guayushua gently opened his girlfriend's chin and carefully fed the steak into it. Is it delicious? I can't stand it. A woman at this time screamed in horror. Seeing the white worm coming out of the corpse's mouth, she hurriedly ran towards the exit of the banquet hall. Then the second, the third, a group of people, followed by a group of people. In the end, all the people in the banquet hall, including the invited band members and the walking waiters, crazily rushed out of the banquet hall. No one dared to come forward. The hotel security captain came over and immediately ordered people to close the door of the banquet hall, cursing. Fortunately, there were no casualties and uncontrollable scenes. I don't care about this matter. No one can break out with the door closed. Wait for the police. Get out of the way. Suddenly, a steady voice sounded from the crowd. It was a young man of about 27 or 28 years old. At this time, he pushed through the crowd with an expression on his face, which made the few security guards in front of the door stunned. The man had already opened the door and walked in himself. Who is this guy? The police? A few courageous security guards, but not bold enough to provoke this lunatic who was still doing horrible things while holding a corpse, stuck their heads out at this moment and looked in through the crack in the door. The man, however, walked up to Guayushua and his girlfriend without saying a word. It's you. Guayushua was stunned, and suddenly, like igniting a barrel of explosives, he angrily said in a low voice, "Why did you follow me? Don't you want to give up? Woman only loves me. Go away." He stretched out his hands to protect his girlfriend. The man frowned and took a deep breath. "I don't know what you're talking about. I've been looking for my missing sister. You said she ran away from home, but I didn't believe it. Now that I've found her, I finally know why she's been missing for months." Silence suddenly broke out. The man furiously grabbed Guayushua's collar with both hands and pulled him in front of him, roaring loudly, "You bastard! You actually killed my sister. How dare you?" Guayushua tilted his head, looking at the man with dull eyes. "What did you say? How could I kill Wenwen? I know, you must be rejected by Wenwen and went crazy, right? Go see a doctor if you're crazy. You're so pitiful." Bang! The man fiercely punched Guayushua's face, beating him to the ground. Then he sat on Guayushua's body, grabbing Guayushua's collar, and angrily said, "You bastard! Tell me, how did you make my little sister like this?" Then he directly pinched Guayushua's neck, shaking it crazily. "Tell me." The suffocating pain caused Guayushua's instinct to resist. He began to struggle. The two of them began to roll on the ground, entangling with each other. Seeing this scene, the security captain outside the door suddenly said, "You go in. There seems to be nothing dangerous on this lunatic. Good opportunity. Let's catch them both. F***CK. If these two guys continued to wrestle here, the things in the banquet hall would be destroyed." The security captain rushed in with his men. In fact, it was not really that scary. After feeling that this lunatic was just an ordinary person, the strong security guards obviously had the courage to fight. 6 or 7 security guards quickly pressed down on the two trembling men and pinned them to the ground. "Listen, I don't care who you two are, but in my territory, you are not allowed to make trouble here." The security captain heavily snorted. "Love go little say W. Chu, you did well this time. You deserve to be praised. I'll give you a bonus." It seemed that he could already foresee the praise from the leaders. Unexpectedly, at this moment, Guayushua crazily bit the palm of a security guard. This bite was incomparably forceful, causing the person to howl in pain. Taking advantage of this moment, Guayushua broke free from a security guard's hand and ran away instantly. "Catch up!" The security guards suddenly roared, but at this time, Guayushua crazily picked up everything he could and threw it at the security guards who caught up with him. "Don't come over! Don't come over! You all want to snatch Wenwen from me, right? Don't come over!" He suddenly grabbed the decorative scented candlesticks on the table and threw them out with all his strength. There were 12 small and delicate candlesticks neatly placed. At first, it was to add to the atmosphere, but now it became a terrifying weapon. When the small candlesticks didn't hit anyone but fell on the ground. This place was covered with soft carpet for the sake of luxury, but suddenly a flame burst out, Come on, come on. Small candlesticks started to be thrown out one after another, and the flames were everywhere. In the blink of an eye, it had formed a big fire. The fire began to burn the nearest tablecloth and spread to the gauze curtains on the four windows. It was like a sea of fire. Ha 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 ha. Come on, come on. Crazy, crazy. The security guard saw that the fire was out of control, so how could they care about catching people? At this time, the most important thing was to escape. F***CK. Where are the smoke detectors? Sure enough, they were just made to cope with the fire prevention project, right? The security captain didn't have time to curse how many fake and real people were involved in the construction of this luxurious hotel. He also ran out of the banquet hall, full of smoke and heat. While the fire was here, those that didn't know the truth but weren't here to watch naturally didn't want to watch. They all rushed to the open-air parking lot in the distance. There's no one here. Those annoying guys, those guys who want to take you away, they've all left. One. Guiyushua smirked and put down the scented candlestick in his hand. He threw it on the ground, and a flame rose up. He walked to the place where his girlfriend sat, murmuring to himself, One. When he walked in, when he arrived at the side of his girlfriend, this place was already raging with flames. That bright red evening gown was completely immersed in the raging flames. The heat of the fire made Guiyushua instinctively not dare to get close. But in front of him, his girlfriend kept screaming in the fire, as if saying, Save me, save me, save me. Guiyushua rushed into the fire recklessly, fiercely hugging his girlfriend, who was burning in the fire. The fire also spread to his body. He crazily hugged his girlfriend and rolled on the ground, ignoring the burns on his body. Finally, the fire was put out. It's okay. It's okay. Guiyushua's body was covered with burn marks, and his skin was red. At this moment, he held his girlfriend's face in his arms. But in front of him, the face in his hands was suddenly separated from a body. The corpse that had been burned for a long time and had been decayed for a long time finally couldn't bear the violent collision, and her head was separated from her body. One. Why? I won't let you die. I won't let you die. I won't. Guiyushua opened his eyes wide, talking to himself. Suddenly, he crazily shouted, Come out! Come out! Come out! Don't you have any wish? Come out! Come out! Then, Customer, what do you want this time? The fire was burning, but there was still a small place that couldn't spread. In the open space in the sea of fire, Guiyushua knelt on the ground, holding his girlfriend's head in pain, and looked at the boss of the club with blurred eyes. He didn't want to guess whether it was an angel's smile or a devil's grin under the clown mask. One, I want her. She's already in your arms, so we don't need to fulfill this wish. No, I want her to come back to life. Come back to life. Guiyushua crazily said. You can make such a wish. Luochio shook his head. However, for you, there's no way to pay for this wish. Why? No matter what it is. No matter what it is. You can take all my lifespan. My internal organs, all my internal organs. Anything. You can take all of them. I'm afraid it's not enough even with your soul. Guiyushua crazily roared. Why? Why did you agree so easily before? Why did you only pay a small price before? Customer, you should understand it better than me. Luochio indifferently said, For a person who's been dead for a long time, but still lives in your imagination, changing the thought of this imaginary person is just changing your own thought, isn't it? Of course, what you've paid is enough for you to keep this imagination forever. After a pause, Luochio lightly said, But if you receive too much stimulation, this imagination can't be maintained after all. It's just a small price. Nonsense. How could one die? Nonsense. You're lying to me. You're lying to me. We don't lie to you. Luochio said softly. She's your girlfriend. I think you know better than me whether you've opened your eyes and looked at her properly. Did he ever open his eyes? I haven't liked to eat braised eggplant for a long time. Yushua, I'm sorry. Actually, it's not my own decision. The company's performance this year is not very good. Well, I believe with your talent, you'll be able to make a big impact in other places. Mr. Gua, I'm sorry, you don't seem to meet the requirements of our company. But if there are other positions, we'll consider informing you at once. It's okay. You're the best. You'll find a better job. And don't we still have savings? Ordinary clerk on the 4th day of every month, 2,500 a month. If you're willing, you can start work tomorrow. Well, I'll continue to work hard tomorrow. My Guiyushua is the best. I have some money here. Take it first. Didn't you say you're not looking for a job, but for a business? Starting capital is also needed, although it's not much. Damn, I helped you as a friend, but you lied to me? Did you just run away? You're just stupid. Besides, you volunteered to be the legal representative. I didn't force you. But next time, remember to study the society well, top student. Where did you get so much money? Me. Recently I traded stocks with my colleagues and earned some money. Take it to pay off your debts first. You went out again? Didn't you just come back from work? Ah, tonight I was invited to dinner, so I couldn't refuse. What's this? I've never seen you wear these clothes and these cosmetics. Why are you hiding them? Tell me. Who's the person who sent you back downstairs? Tell me. He bitch. Slap. No, I'm not. 10 p.m., Tinning Hotel. What's this? It's clearly written on the phone. Do you think I'm an idiot? Listen to me? Ha. I know. I know where your money comes from. I know it all. And this man, did he have a good chat with you? He persuaded you to leave me, right? You're actually considering it, right? I'm just a useless trash, right? No. Get lost. I don't want your money. I don't want your F***king money. Get lost. Sorry. I'm leaving. In this life, I loved you. In the raging fire, Guiyushua just held the head in his arms. Big drops of tears flowed down. He began to cry loudly, heartbreaking. It's not that you're not good enough. It's just that I've never seriously opened my eyes and stared at you for even a second. Those promises, I've long forgotten them. They've long been torn to pieces by those setbacks. That night, she was like this, wearing a bright red evening dress, quietly lying on the sofa. And in my hand was the knife that pierced her heart. Guiyushua trembled as he caressed the face that had been burned by the flames. He said in a hoarse voice, "This is the dress I bought for the first time when I brought her to a banquet. I have never seen her so beautiful when I look at her. There's never been a moment when I truly felt the gazes on her body burning so passionately. I'm a loser, a complete loser." Guiyushua slowly raised his head. Terrible, a failure. The one who doesn't deserve her is actually me. I kept asking myself, why? I couldn't think of an answer. I woke up drunk, and suddenly woke up one day. I seemed to see Winwin come back to life. Is she still by my side? Is she still making the food I like to eat for me? Is she still waiting for me to come back? But actually, it's not important. Guiyushua stopped sobbing, as if he was about to collapse, because I've already lost her forever and ever. Why? Only when I lost her do I know regret. Only when I lost her do I know my mistake. I destroyed everything with my own hands. I have a request. Is it okay? Guiyushua stared blankly at the mysterious man who listened to him and asked with great expectation. Of course, we won't refuse the request of our guests. Then, I'd like to have a dance with her. We've never really had a dance. Let's finish the last dance. That day, when I met at the tiny gas station, I looked at you, and I knew I fell in love with you. Until now, I'm still immersed in that day when we first met, that natural and pure smile. Guiyushua stood there silently, not paying attention to the separated corpse. At this time, it began to reassemble again, and new skin began to grow on the rotting flesh. He could only stare at her in a daze. Looking at her in front of him, it was as though he had returned to that day, the way we first met. Guiyushua gently raised his hand, grasping the cold body. The heat of the fire didn't seem to be able to spread to this small space. The woman in front of him opened her eyes. Her eyes were as clear as always, with a familiar smile. Come, let's finish the last dance. The music suddenly rang. In the banquet hall, surrounded by flames, on the dance floor where flames spread, there was the sound of a bass saxophone. In the raging fire, the club boss gently turned around, taking off the clown mask on his face. He held the saxophone brought by the banquet band and slowly played it. Before we parted, when we spun and turned around, this is the feeling of meeting for the first time. After this first dance, it would also be the last dance. Sorry, I love you. Yin 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 PS1. This is for a guy who didn't care about my feelings. When I was sleepy, he tipped me a helm liter and then heartlessly made me stay up late. Just over 6,000 words. 2 in 1. I don't owe him anymore. PS2. Since it's new, ask for recommendation tickets, tips, and so on equals. Equals PS3. Good night, everyone. Chapter 102. Genius 1. Second, remember love. Divided by. Go divided by little. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. The contract has been established. We will fulfill your request in the future, and we promise to fulfill it. And the final transaction fee will be collected at the end of your life. Is this okay? It's enough. I can do it. I can compensate. After the firefighters' rescue, the fire in the banquet hall was finally put out. Sir, you can't go in. Outside the fire, a man was being intercepted by the firefighters. However, the man pushed him away with a tough attitude. My sister is inside. You guys, go away. He pushed them away forcefully and then rushed into the scene. The place was filled with the pungent smell of burned plastic, and the surroundings were mixed with ashes and water. The man ignored this and ran to the location according to his memory. The firefighters who had just put out the fire couldn't stop him in time. Not long after, the man who had barged in suddenly stopped in his tracks. He saw Guiyu Shuo and his sister. He saw him holding his sister and sitting quietly on the ground. He lowered his head as if he was staring. Their surroundings were clean and quiet. The fire didn't seem to have the heart to spread, leaving the two of them hugging each other like this. The man was startled and subconsciously walked closer. Step by step, he finally came in front of the two of them. He lowered his head and looked at his sister in Guiyu Shuo's arms. Inconceivably, he saw a rotten corpse not long ago. Even if a relative saw it, he would feel horrified and scared. Love, go little say W. Chew, but at this moment she was so beautiful. Just like when she was alive, just like when she was sleeping. Her hands were placed on her chest, and her eyes were closed, but there was a smile on her face. You? The man said with difficulty. Guiyu Shuo's shoulders suddenly moved slightly, and he slowly raised his head. Can you wait a little longer? I know the police are outside. Wait a moment, I will turn myself in. But, can you wait a little longer? I just want to see her again. Your eyes. The man subconsciously took 2 steps back. It was empty and pitch black, as if it had never existed in the first place. The Guiyu Shuo in front of him had no eyes. What I can see, I'll always be able to see. Guiyu Shuo smiled and said softly, I'm afraid I'll forget it. So I made it the last thing I can see, the thing that will forever be imprinted in my mind. The man, Wenwen's brother, looked at his sister, who was smiling peacefully. He did not know the meaning behind this smile. But if it was because she was still lying in Guiyu Shuo's arms in the end and felt the man's shame and guilt, then he was more willing to think this way as her brother. Wenwen's brother took a deep breath and closed his eyes, watching in silence. Not long after, the police came in. Guiyu Shuo didn't resist at all. He bluntly confessed that he had killed his girlfriend because he wanted to escape from reality and couldn't bear the pressure of setbacks. However, the prisoner who surrendered did not mention anything about why the corpse was preserved so well and how to determine the time of death. After 2 days of hard work, he still had to collect the corpse from the police station. Wenwen's brother was tired for a long time, but then he received a call from an unknown number. Excuse me, is this Mr. Wang Wuliang? I am. Who are you? Ah, hello, Mr. Wang. I would like to confirm that you are Miss Wang Jingwen's brother, a direct relative, right? Who are you? It's like this. We're from Peace Insurance Company. Miss Wang Jingwen had insured accident insurance for you, her father, and her mother. Because the amount is relatively large, we need to ask you and your parents to bring your identification and other documents. Wang Guoyang listened to the phone call in disbelief, and even more disbelief when he heard the amount of the insurance. That was a fortune that he could never earn in this life, or even the next life. However, inconceivable things kept happening one after another. Hey, Guoyang, let me tell you, when I went to the hospital this morning, the doctor said that your father's diabetes was cured. I don't know what I did these 2 days, but I feel much more energetic and I can see things more clearly. My presbyopia is gone. Even the child who was born with asthma suddenly got rid of the torment of the disease. His wife was so happy that she cried and called to report the good news. Wang Guoyang sat there in a daze, still waiting for the document to be signed, but his mind was blank. Even if his sister had the awareness to buy insurance. But the insurance with such a huge amount of money would require a large amount of money. He did not think that his sister had the ability to buy such insurance. Today, what is going on? Wang Guoyang looked at the clock on the wall in a daze. He was sad and happy at the same time. Could it be that his dead sister was blessing her family in the underworld? It seemed that he could only think of this subconsciously. Serenade for strings in C major. In the messy apartment, this dance had been playing on loop. The record player had probably replayed it for a long time. How many days? Maybe even longer. It was still not burned, so one could imagine that the quality was really good, right? Thinking of the song he played with the saxophone not long ago, he simply could not beat Old Chai's Serenade for Strings in C major. Boss Luo slightly mocked himself, but he had not touched the saxophone for a long time, and he could still barely finish it. That was barely enough, right? At that time, he was just following his heart, but now he felt a little ashamed. Fortunately, he did not have to show it in front of others. Luocio's eyes fell on the surroundings of the apartment. Whether it was the walls, the floor, or the sofa, they were all messily painted with paint. But there was a burst of foul smell coming from the kitchen. A few, or more than 10 portions of roasted braised eggplants formed a smell that was really hard to get close to. Boss Luo decided not to go in. Luocio looked at the city from the floor-to-ceiling glass window. He knew that Guiyushua had also looked at the city from here. Maybe his girlfriend also looked at the city from here. At that time, he and she were still young, and they should still see each other in their eyes. They also had the dream of working hard in this big city. He should have said that he worked hard to build a home here, and she should have looked forward to it with yearning. At that time, what he and she saw was probably the most beautiful thing in their lives. But now, she could no longer see it, and he could never see it from afar. What he could still see was his girlfriend's smile in the last dance in his memory. Luocio held a small bottle in his hand, which contained a pair of eyeballs. This was the price of the last dance. Silently letting this pair of eyes look at the city outside the window, Luocio finally slowly covered the small bottle with a piece of black gauze. He turned off the record player, and the place suddenly became quiet. But there were still thousands of bright lights outside the window. This city was still bustling. Yin, 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 PS1. If you feel that it is difficult to survive in the big city, go back to the city you are familiar with. There is nothing wrong with having a home there. PS2. Shamelessly ask for tickets and tips equals. Chapter 103. Genius 1, Second Remember Love, divided by small. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Romania. The sunset and the sea of flowers. The castle was still quiet, perhaps even quieter than before. Osmond had completed the procedures of this country and inherited the castle and everything of his family. He was a super lucky guy in the eyes of the outside world. The fact that almost all the Sosescu family members, especially the younger generation, were dead seemed to have become a buried secret. There was no police coming, no investigation by busybodies. Everything was like a script that had been written. He acted as the protagonist of this script, inherited the whole Sosescu family, and then became a puppet named Black Order. Indeed, he was a puppet. Although he had a lot of freedom in life, he could only enjoy this freedom by serving this mysterious order continuously. Inherit the Sosescu family? Osmond knew that he was just a tool used by Black Order to control the huge wealth of this family. Looking at the place in the middle of the maze of the atrium and the sea of flowers from the balcony of the east wing of the castle, the ancient well where everything happened, Osmond couldn't help but frown. This was no longer the original ancient well. During this period, under the command of Lamias, it had become a huge box made of a large number of steel plates. He didn't know what his sister, the fraternal twin sister, was doing in the secret room under the ancient well every day. Only, the devil's whisper in the strange sarcophagus gradually became clearer in his ears day by day. Mr. Osmond, today's document. Love go little say, W? Chu, the person who knocked on the door, was a tall Indian woman with light yellow skin. Somam, a woman who represented the Black Order, or was appointed to assist him to deal with the business of the Sosescu family. It was undeniable that, when Osmond saw this capable Indian woman for the first time, he had a feeling of being attracted. Somam, do you deserve what my sister, Lamias, is doing there? Osmond suddenly asked. Even if he inherited such a huge wealth, even if he looked extremely prosperous, he instinctively resisted the feeling of being controlled. Then it's more appropriate for you to ask Miss Lamias yourself. Samna, who was wearing a black suit and high heels, appeared like a secretary. She deftly avoided the question. If he had asked her, if she would have told him, he wouldn't have asked her here. Osmond muttered to himself. To be honest, he didn't want to be alone with the woman who was dressed like a nun, but seemed to have a violent and bloody beast hidden in her body. Even though the woman had made it clear that she had only come into this world a few minutes before him. Give me the document. It's just a signature anyway. Bang, bang, bang. The stone coffin was shaking non-stop, and the sound was coming from the stone coffin. It was as if the thing inside would break out of the coffin at any moment. At this moment, there were a total of 7 black-clothed priests surrounding the stone coffin. They held silver crosses in their hands as they continuously chanted. Judging from the situation, we will need to send at least twice as many people to suppress the impaling Duke's left hand. Nun Miss Lamias, who had a solemn expression, was now using a satellite phone to communicate with the management of the religious order in a faraway place. On the other side of the phone, a man's voice was steady and slow. Isn't it said that the Sosescu family would complete the seal smoothly on the night of the succession change? Perhaps there are some things that Jonathan didn't disclose that year. Lamias frowned and said, "What I know is only the situation that he once told my mother. When the successor is confirmed in the secret chamber, the seal will continue. I even let Osmond participate in the end. In any case, we can't let the impaling Duke's left hand break the seal so easily for the time being. I don't believe that our current technology can't match the ancient seal from hundreds of years ago. Lamias, you come back first. The religious order has a new task for you. I'll send someone else to follow up on the seal of the ancient castle." Lamias didn't say anything, but simply responded. Then she turned off the communication and walked out of the secret chamber, returning to the ground. At this moment, a helicopter landed on the lawn far away, and a man in a suit with a black suitcase got off. Lamias walked forward, and the man opened the suitcase. "According to your request, it's been rebuilt." Lamias nodded, reaching out her hand to pick up a new revolver with 10 bullets in the suitcase. Not long ago, she lost her usual one in this place, and hadn't found it until now. It was too weird. The nun squinted her eyes, aiming at the crown of an oak tree in the distance with a new weapon. "Don't let me know who stole my big gun." Bang! Achoo! She sneezed, although it wasn't very loud. At least it startled Zhang Qingrui, who was concentrating on her work, and the small piece of mud in her hand almost fell down. She couldn't help but look at Luochio, who was sitting on the other side of the workbench, and found that he was also rubbing his nose lightly. "Did you catch a cold?" Luochio shook his head. As the leader of the club, if he could get sick now, it would be too low for him. It should be the mud. The brush kept sweeping the mud attached to the bones, and it was easy for the mud to become naughty and hit the nose. Zhang Qingrui nodded, lowering her head to sweep the mud in her hand. Because the skeleton had a long history, it was extremely fragile. Every piece needed to be handled carefully so that it would not be damaged. The 2 students, who were jokingly said to have chosen this course because they were under the influence of witchcraft, were also novices, so they worked very slowly. After several days, they only made about half of the progress, but now they could see what these bones were before they were broken. These should be female bones. Zhang Qingrui, who was sweeping the bones, didn't raise her head, but suddenly said, "Judging from the structure of the pelvic bone, it should be." Luoqiu also answered. Zhang Qingrui suddenly stopped, raising her head to look at Luoqiu again, and asked curiously, "Luoqiu, aren't you curious? Where did Professor Qin Fong dig out this skeleton? Normally, if such a thing was unearthed, it would be built on the spot and then excavated carefully. But this thing, was directly packed back? So, aren't you curious?" Zhang Qingrui looked at Luoqiu in astonishment. This is obviously not the skeleton of a primitive person. Paleontology is more about exploring the evolutionary process of living things, right? If this is only a skeleton of an ancient person, there's no reason for Professor to carry it back from thousands of miles away. Luoqiu thought that there was something strange about this skeleton, but he didn't intend to discuss or study this issue with Zhang Qingrui. But at this moment, Ms. Zhang on the opposite side of the workbench suddenly stood up. She was expressionless, and her eyes were absent-minded. Without saying a word, she walked towards the door with her hands clasped around her waist. She walked with delicate steps, like a willow swaying in the wind, as if she was another person. Yin 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 PS1. I didn't see the helmsman of Momo last night, so this chapter is added for Momo, 1/2. PS2. Don't forget to vote. Equals. Chapter 104. A genius remembers love in 1 second /small. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Professor Qin Fong drove out early in the morning, saying that he was going back to the university to get something. In fact, only Luoqiu and Zhang Qingrui were left in this old villa. Since they were both registered students, the professor did not seem to be worried that the two students would do anything suspicious. Besides, it would only take a few hours for them to return. Seeing Zhang Qingrui's strange behavior, Luoqiu thoughtfully glanced at the clean bones on the workbench. After the first day of contact, the strange feeling disappeared the next day. In the next few days, he could no longer feel those words that were like songs, poems, and sentences released from the bones. Zhang Qingrui opened the door and walked out. After a glance, Luoqiu remained silent and followed from behind. He tried to call Zhang Qingrui's name from behind, but she didn't seem to hear him. She walked step by step carefully. If she changed into a set of Han Chinese clothing, wouldn't she look like a young lady from an ancient family? Zhang Qingrui finally stopped in front of the door at the bottom of the stairs. She stood silently in front of the door, but did not enter. She just stood there strangely. After a while, Luoqiu frowned. He walked past Zhang Qingrui and looked at her face. She was staring behind the door. Luoqiu, who already had some guesses in his mind, glanced at the position of the door under the stairs. This place seemed to be a storage room built using the space under the stairs. But he still walked forward, put his hand on the door handle, and slightly twisted it. "It's locked." Luoqiu didn't let go. The club boss frowned. A slight twisting sound came from the door lock. When he tried again, the door lock was opened. Luoqiu then opened the door. After opening the door, she was stunned for a moment. It was not a place for the other party's miscellaneous items as he had imagined. In fact, he had not seen the space inside yet. This was because there was actually another door behind this one. Luoqiu subconsciously knocked on the door. It was a steel door. As for the lock, it was an electronic lock. Ordinary people wouldn't set up such a door and lock in their house. There was probably something valuable hidden inside, or something that they didn't want others to see. Unless it was necessary, Luoqiu didn't like to pry into other people's privacy. Of course, if it was a guest in the club, it would be a different situation. Knowing that there might be something behind the metal door that the professor did not want to expose, Luoqiu felt like he could stop here. He closed the first door again. At this moment, Zhang Qingrui was still staring at him. "I don't know what you're trying to say." Luoqiu was silent for a while and suddenly said, "But no matter what you want to say, since you are already dead, why are you still attached to the mortal world?" Luoqiu recalled Lu Zigong, who was also a soul that had drifted in the world for hundreds of years. At this moment, there was obviously something similar on Zhang Qingrui. Without saying anything, Zhang Qingrui suddenly fell down, as if she had lost all her strength. But she just fell asleep. It was reasonable to say that he should be the one who could get in touch with the thing hidden in the skeleton. However, the thing chose Zhang Qingrui as its attachment. It seemed that even if it attached to the body, it still couldn't express something clearly. Luochio still didn't know much about ghosts. After thinking for a while, he stretched out his hand to let Zhang Qingrui's body float up and follow him back to the studio. He placed her in her original position and pretended that she was sleeping on the table. Then, he continued with the work at hand. About an hour later, Zhang Qingrui slowly woke up. She looked at Luochio with confusion and asked, "How long have I slept?" "A while." "Professor, you haven't come back yet." Luochio paused and suddenly asked, "Are you not feeling well?" Zhang Qingrui shook her head. "I'm a bit tired." "Okay." Luochio nodded. "Have a good rest." Zhang Qingrui didn't care much about Luochio's casual conversation since she had been used to it. Then they just talked with each other occasionally to make up for the boredom of the work. Professor Qin Fong called back, saying that he would have dinner with a friend and asked Luochio and Zhang Qingrui to lock the door and leave. "Let me give you a ride." Zhang Qingrui looked at Luochio out of politeness when she took the car. However, Boss Luo, who had the ability that was more convenient than any other transportation in the city, was reluctant to do so. At this time, the traffic jam would make him refuse to make friends on the road. No need. Right at this moment, a white car drove in from the entrance of the villa. That was Qin Shuyu. She got off the car, looking a bit absent-minded, as if she didn't see Luochio and Zhang Qingrui beside her. She seemed to be thinking about something or being absent-minded. Anyway, she didn't look back after entering the villa. What a strange person. Zhang Qingrui frowned, murmuring. Although she felt that Qin Shuyu was the kind of person with stories, she didn't want to make friends with her proactively. When Zhang Qingrui came back to her senses, Luochio had already walked far away. He was really a free and easy person. Zhang Qingrui smiled subconsciously. She didn't hate this only classmate of hers. On the contrary, she felt more at ease during the short time they spent in class. It was reasonable to say that this was actually a person who was as dull as a block of wood. However, the time spent together always flew by. She didn't think that she understood this young man, nor did she think that he understood her. They were just friends of gentlemen, simple and indifferent. Perhaps, in her heart, subconsciously, she was looking forward to this kind of carefree and unperturbed person. There was a place for her father to work in the villa, and also a place for her to paint in her spare time. Had she come back? When Qin Shuyu came back to her senses, she was already in the studio at home. She frowned. She had been in a state of restlessness and absent-mindedness for the past 2 days. Time passed unknowingly. The cause of all this seemed to be the painting that a guest gave her to frame a few days ago. That gentleman hadn't come for several days. Qin Shuyu could only wait silently, because she didn't have a way to contact him. Later, when she read the news in the newspaper and read the news that the man was arrested for arson and murder of his girlfriend, Qin Shuyu understood that this painting would be left in her hands for a long time. She walked to the framed painting, lifting the cloth covering it and immersing herself in the content of the painting again. What was this? What appeared on the paper was a woman in a red evening dress. It was a very good composition, no matter how one looked at it. Only the face of the woman in the painting. He had no eyes and no nose. If one had to describe him, he was probably a person without a face. However, it was not as if there was nothing drawn on his face. There were various pigments, which seemed to be intentional or random, forming this chaotic face without any rules. Qin Shuyu had never seen such a strange way of painting. She gazed at the strange face of the woman in the painting, feeling the contradictory, unconventional, and even untraceable thoughts of the painter. What kind of chaotic and self-contradictory thoughts would that be? It seemed that a vortex was born in front of her eyes. Her heart suddenly beat fast, and her body stepped back subconsciously. Fine sweat beads oozed out from her forehead, and a wisp of blood overflowed from her lips unconsciously. When she gazed at this painting again, Qin Shuyu's eyes appeared to be unusually complicated. At this moment, she recalled many things, muttering to herself, "I actually lost my mind because of this painting. What kind of lunatic could make this painting that could make people crazy?" She recalled that she used to be called Yu Sanyang, Yin 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 PS1. This is the second chapter, two halves, of yesterday's tipping. PS2, 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. There's one more update. PS3, continue to ask for all kinds of tickets. Chapter 105. Genius remembers love in 1 second divided by little. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. When he returned to the club in the evening, Yi had already put on her usual maid costume. Perhaps the club's boss didn't particularly like the modified nun costume, or maybe he didn't like it, so Miss May took it off when she felt that its freshness had worn off. Luocio walked to the corner of the room where the gramophone was. He was picking out vinyl discs from the cabinet and suddenly talked about what happened during the day. After Miss Maid heard it, she smiled slightly. "How do you feel, master?" Luocio carefully recalled the scene before and after. "It should be a little resistant to me." Yi nodded and said softly, "Although I don't know why the soul hidden in the bone was formed, it must be very weak." Seeing that Miss Maid could answer his question, Luocio put down the vinyl discs in his hand and walked to the counter and sat down. Yui poured a glass of water and pushed it in front of Luocio. Then she continued, "If master is compared to the light source, then the weak soul is like a shadow. It's like the shadowless lamp on the operating table. Can the shadow still be contained? So, it's afraid of me?" Luocio was stunned. Yi said softly, "A more scientific way of saying is that master is like an individual with a strong magnetic field. How dare these weak electric waves approach you?" He had thought that there was some unspeakable secret or something like that. Who would have thought that in the end, it would be such a simple answer? Luocio was stunned and played with the water in the glass. However, if that soul also chose to enter Miss Zhang's body, it seems that Miss Zhang herself should be the kind of person who is particularly easy to attract ghosts and spirits. Luocio thought for a while, something like psychic or yin-yang eyes. That should be the case in the East. Yi nodded, or just a stronger sense of perception than ordinary people. Will Zhang Qingrui be affected? Luocio asked. If it can't last for long, it must be weak. Yi said in an intellectual voice. After all, it takes a lot of energy to influence a living person's movements. But it seems that if it can't even communicate with Master normally, it's probably the kind of soul that could be annihilated at any moment. Therefore, I think that it won't be long before it will be strengthened by Miss Zhang's. Well, the East should be the Yang energy. It will be worn down by Yang Qi. Luocio didn't say anything. He knew he was weak, but he still attached himself to Zhang Qingrui's body without hesitation. He was trying to express something important. Under the stairs, there was something hidden behind the steel door. Boss Luo was deep in thought as he sipped his water. A gust of black wind rushed into the club. It spun in front of Luocio and quickly revealed its true form. Onyx Soul, Taiyinzi yo. Greetings to Master, yo yo yo. Rock and roll, puff. It wasn't a close call, but Boss Luo, who choked, coughed a few times. Miss Maid didn't care about anything else, taking out a handkerchief to wipe the water around Master's mouth. Taiyinzi saw the appearance of the club's gang leader. His arm, that was making the classic hip-hop gesture, froze. Let's review this magical scene again. The old ghost, who had been imprisoned for 500 years, had a huge and exaggerated afro hairstyle one day after he was released. His shriveled body was also wearing a fancy long shirt with open lapels. As for his lower body, it was completely smooth and close-fitting tight leather pants. Such an old ghost said yo in front of you. What the F asterisk CK yo? At the very least, he should shave off that catfish-like beard that hangs down from his face. Boss Luo, who had never seen such an eyesore, coughed a few times and his choked throat felt a little better. Taiyinzi, what are you doing? Boss Luo heaved a heavy sigh, touching his face to make himself more energetic. Taiyinzi heard the club's owner's question, saying quickly, Yo, master, you don't know yo recently, yo. Don't F asterisk king, yo. Yo, your sister. Taiyinzi was terrified. Even Yi looked at her owner subconsciously. In the short period of their relationship, it was the first time she heard such strong emotions from her new owner. To put it simply, it was the first time Boss Luo scolded someone. Luocio heaved a heavy sigh, saying quietly, "Say it, be normal." "Yes, yes." Tainzi, who didn't dare to show anything, hurriedly made a bow with his hands folded in front. After regaining some of the ancient style, he said carefully, "I think that if I want to find a suitable investor, I must thoroughly understand the trend of today's society." There was a leader in this country who said it very well, and I deeply agree with him. That is to keep pace with the times. Speaking of this, Tainzi glanced at the club owner who had closed his eyes, and then looked at the servant girl who was standing beside him. This little girl's face has a smile that is not a smile. Just looking at it makes this old Taoist panic. Boss Luo, who was listening silently, only lightly punching his forehead with his fist, exhaled again. "Go on." "Yes, yes." Tianzi swallowed his saliva. "I found that only by practicing can I clearly understand the thoughts of today's young people. I saw on the internet that our great country has been seriously impacted by the culture of the Western barbarians and is gradually forgetting the essence of Kelowna's culture." Seeing that the two club giants still didn't intend to speak, Tianzi braced himself and continued, "If this goes on, what should we do?" In modern times, there was an upright official who said something that was quite pleasing to my ears. "Learn from the barbarians to control the barbarians." So I practiced it myself, changed my appearance, and blended into the Western barbarians' culture. "Then what did you feel?" Luocio suddenly asked. Tianzi raised his head, bowed again with his hands folded in front, and said, "Well, I think this kind of rock music is very pleasant to listen to." "What else?" "Especially heavy metal. It's simply irresistible." "And?" "Although this dressing is a bit different, it can reflect the vitality of life." Tianzi turned around. "I think it's not bad. Can you first shave off the catfish whiskers on your face before you shake your butt, Moss?" "Master?" Seeing that Luocio didn't intend to respond, Tianzi anxiously called out, "Is there anything else?" "This is the customer that I found recently." Tianzi took a deep breath, and a flashing white card slowly began to appear between his hands. This was probably the most unexpected thing that Boss Luo felt all day. Unlike the customers who automatically came in, this customer who was found was a factor that needed to be considered, whether to give the black card, whether to lure them in, and so on. "I know." Luocio took the white card. "Go do your work." "Yes, master." Tianzi suddenly became much more energetic. This was a very good start. If the master decided to give out the black card, or if he didn't give it out but still planned to lure the new customer, then it would be his first business deal. A skyscraper rose from the ground. Blazing red. Defeat the little girl, become the club's black soul chief, and walk to the top. "Wait, I don't mind if you want to wear clothes, but you have to shave off those catfish whiskers." "Yes." Chapter 106. Genius remembers love in 1 second divided by small. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. But it had to be said that Tianzi was adapting to this era at a very fast speed, although there might be some mistakes in the adaptation. A Black Soul envoy was probably the club's favorite. Luo Chi-Chi seemed to have heard the laughter from the altar on the 3rd floor of the basement. He pressed one corner of the white card with his finger, while the other corner was against the counter. The two upright white cards slowly rotated in front of Luo Chio. Luocio chose to watch the content of the Sugar Daddy with Miss Made this time. Along with the rotation of the white card, some small pictures were broadcasting in the air, the Sugar Daddy's recent life. It didn't take a long time. Suddenly, Luocio wanted to know what Yu Yi thought of the Sugar Daddy from the perspective of a maid who had served for 300 years. He asked, "What do you think of the Sugar Daddy?" Yu Yi thought for a while and said, "I'm afraid the Sugar Daddy can only provide lifespan and soul. Of course, if it's just simple things, we can also include the unhealthy organs of the Sugar Daddy." Yu Yi was not interested in the Sugar Daddy, or it could be said that she didn't even have any interest. She shook her head. It seems that Tianzi needs to go back in time to judge the Sugar Daddy. The new boss, who had gradually become familiar with the club's business, was silent for a while and suddenly asked, "Is this also the way to judge the Sugar Daddy before?" Yi said softly, "Yes, We wait for the customer who enters or the sugar daddy that Black Soul is looking for. The former sugar daddy will give out the black card when he thinks it's possible. Luaccio asked again, have there been any mistakes in the process of the transaction? For this unexpected question, the servant girl looked at her new master in puzzlement, but she also carefully pondered the meaning of this question. She replied cautiously, we calculated the possibility that the customer has to pay, and, in the end, it is basically consistent with the initial judgment. Do you remember Jiangchu? Luaccio said softly. At that time, the white card brought by Black Soul number 9 determined that this soul was above average. But in the end, what we obtained was a soul that had already become of high quality. Yi nodded and said, yes, that is an unexpected change. Why? Yi was stunned for a moment before she thought about it carefully. Because at the end of my life, I received something similar to redemption, self-forgiveness. Luaccio added, for example, Emo Xiaofei. Yi continued her train of thought. If he can maintain the ideals in his heart throughout his life, he will definitely be a very good soul at the end of his life. Just as Master said, time can brew the mellowness of courage. At this point, Yi bit her lip and said, Master thinks that even a mediocre soul can become resplendent. Luaccio shook his head. I don't know, it's just that he played with the white card in his hand, carefully considering his own thoughts. It's just that, no matter who it is, good or bad, I think they will have their own beauty. Just like a raw stone, we don't know if there is a beautiful jade inside, if it is not broken. Furthermore, if there is, we don't know what kind of resplendent it can emit if it is not carved. Yi suddenly said, the former master didn't work on this aspect. He may have known this. After all, it is impossible for him not to notice it after such a long time. But why didn't he take this path? I don't know. Luaccio said indifferently, I am not him, and I don't have his attitude. I like to be alone, and I like to observe human beings. Although I'm a little weird as a human being, if it is a hobby, there are probably many people like me. Luaccio walked to the counter at this time, taking out several different cocktails from the wine cabinet. He recalled that Yi once made a cocktail and began to mix it himself. I don't intend to guide people to do good. I just want to see if even a mediocre person can release his magnificence. The color of the cocktail was originally very monotonous, but when they were mixed, they became colorful. Luaccio slowly pushed the cocktail in front of him, looking at it carefully. And if the soul obtained by Ru Gue can become excellent, it is also a good thing for me and the club itself, isn't it? Boss Luo put a cherry in the end. The spotlessly white card suddenly started to burn, and in the end, it turned into a black card as black as ink. When it started to burn again, it completely disappeared. In general, Zhuge felt that his life could be summed up in one word, dislike. To be more specific, it should be the life of the disliked Zhuge. Although this summary was somewhat influenced by a movie, Zhuge felt that it was actually not too far off. Why did he say so? He was not born smart, and his grades were not good. No matter how hard he tried, he still couldn't remember the knowledge in the textbook. His grades were always so stable as the cornerstone of the class. The accumulated fat over the years seemed to be impossible to remove. He was almost an insulator for women during his school days. There were also times when hormones were impulsive. I'm sorry, I like cute boys. I'm sorry, I like cute girl paper. I'm sorry, I'm a cute boy paper. Sports, no. Beach? No, I once drowned, I'm afraid. Drink together? I'm sorry, I don't drink. Big healthcare? Without an experienced driver to lead the way. After work, he went home. In his phone's address book, there were only his parents' phone numbers and his boss' phone number. There were no extra phone numbers. He had no friends, no girlfriend, no high salary, lived in a cheap rental house, and was already considered a compliment for his looks. There were no activities to pass the time. Sometimes when he went home, he would stare blankly until late at night. In the middle of the night, he would hug a pillow and cry while watching Clannad. The next day, he would wake up in a hurry and often miss the bus, and then the whole day would seem to be terrible. Anyway, with Nanako, I won't feel lonely. Zhuge laughed foolishly. Don't misunderstand, this was Nanako, not Nanako, nor Raimai Nanako, but Nanako, a virtual character in a mobile game. Nanako is the best, super tall. Juga, who was busy interacting with the cute girl on his smartphone, sat down on a single bed that occupied half of the room. He didn't notice that his huge body was pressing down on a black card that appeared here without him knowing. Why was he despised? In short, it was disgusting to stay at home. Yin 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 PS. Daily request equals. Chapter 107. Genius 1, second remember love, / go, / little. Show up. Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. In the subway car, Juga looked at the empty seat next to him. On the left and right, there was a girl on each side. One was relatively ordinary, and the other should be called ugly, but he didn't sit on the empty seat. She watched as the ordinary-looking girl shifted her position and hugged her handbag tightly. Then, she watched as the other ugly girl tugged at her skirt and shifted her position. She looked like she wanted to make more space for him, but he better not sit down. Juga hesitated for a moment, but the empty seat was quickly taken by a young man. Juga was silent for a moment and silently walked to the corner of the car. He sighed softly and subconsciously turned on his phone. Love and Live. This was a beautiful girl's mobile game equipped with a live 2D function. Juga spent half of his salary on this game almost every month. More functions were unlocked. Items could be purchased to increase favorability, more attire, more scenes, but not more poses were unlocked. This was a mobile game that was purely for love. Moreover, Nanako was so pure and kind-hearted that she didn't know how to judge people by their appearance. She was even so considerate. He couldn't bear to blaspheme her. Putting on his headphones, Juga sent out the present he got this morning. Hanako said, "I'm so shy. Did Juga eat breakfast today?" Input method, yes. Nanako, what did you eat? According to the statistics, Juga's breakfast this week didn't seem to be very healthy. Pay attention to your diet. Input method, N. Nanako, and do more exercise. Input method, N. Just like this, Juga completely forgot about the time. In a gradually crowded car, the long-standing time unknowingly came to an end. When they arrived at the station, Juga hurriedly went out of the gate. But for some reason, as if he was pushed by someone, he directly fell to the ground. The phone in his hand suddenly fell out. The clumsy Juga at this time burst out with terrifying agility. Using the strength of his legs, he ignored the painful consequences and finally caught the phone. The people who were rushing to work didn't pay much attention. As for the one who paid attention, at this time, he frowned. Taiyinzi frowned. Since Juga went out in the morning, he actually frowned, because this guy, he really couldn't stand it anymore, so he secretly kicked him. But work still needed to be done. Taiyinzi at this time turned into a gray fog. Ordinary people couldn't see it, although it was gray. This gray fog easily wrapped around Juga's body. Not long after, Juga returned to the company. It was a very simple snack company. As for his position in this company, clerk, writing clerk to do odd jobs. Juga, help me print this document. Juga, please help me order 5 lunches. We are in a meeting. Juga, I sent some samples, you go and bring them back. Basically, there was no room for promotion in this kind of job, right? Juga, who came back with a box of snack samples, wiped the sweat on his forehead. It's already so late? Juga subconsciously looked at the wall clock on the wall. It was almost 1 o'clock. There were only a few people in the office. Oh no, I have to give Nanako lunch. Phone, where's my phone? Juga was stunned. That was something that basically never left his body, but now it was not in his pocket. He couldn't help but feel a little anxious, and hurriedly went back to his seat to look for it. No. Where is it? Suddenly, a familiar voice rang in Juga's ears. Because of the lunch break, the office was relatively quiet, so he immediately heard it. Juga, I like you the most. No, Juga is the most handsome person. Juga, you are so awesome. It seemed that the volume was deliberately turned up to the maximum. Not only could Juga hear it, but also a few of the colleagues who were resting or eating in the office could hear it. Nanako's voice. Juga's heart suddenly panicked, and subconsciously looked at the source of the voice, a colleague. To be precise, it was a salesperson who was good at business and was valued by his superior. He was playing with his phone, and at the same time, he was laughing. Although it was not very loud, to Zhuge, the laughter was extremely harsh. It was 10 times harsher than the horn at the intersection blocked by the traffic lights. Get it back to me. Zhuge had no time to think about how the other party knew his password. Now, he just wanted to take back his things. Don't be so stingy. I just borrowed it for fun. The colleague laughed carelessly. I usually see you holding a treasure. I am curious. Get back to me. Zhuge was rarely angry. Or it should be said that ever since his colleagues got used to this clerk, they had never seen him angry. But at this moment, he was furious. Love, go little say, W. Chu, the male colleague who had a good performance, was stunned. The people in the office hadn't all left yet. Now that he was yelled at by Zhuge in front of people, he felt a little embarrassed, so he shrugged and said, Okay. I'll get it back to you. It's just a game. You really treat it as your girlfriend. I don't want to criticize you, Zhuge, but you are an adult, right? Can you not be so childish? A character in a lousy game is acting coquettishly to you, and you actually laugh like that. Anyway, the characters in this game are all the same, right? Your girlfriend is also in someone else's hands right now, isn't she? Haha, so disgusting. There was some low laughter. Zhuge listened anxiously. It was the laughter of other colleagues. Let me help you back to this realistic society. The male colleague with good performance looked at Zhuge's appearance at this time, smiled, swiped his finger, and instantly deleted the app. He didn't hesitate even when the option of delete user data was shown. Zhuge was stunned, looking at the phone interface that was casually put on the table by the colleague. The familiar icon had disappeared. The male colleague with good performance patted Zhuge's shoulder at this moment. Welcome back to the adult world. Don't play this disgusting game anymore. If you want a girlfriend, say it, and I will introduce her to you. What do you know, huh? You don't know anything at all. You don't know anything at all. Zhuge raised his head abruptly and grabbed the collar of the other party with both hands. He roared, You. Go to hell. Zhuge fiercely raised his fist. Unexpectedly, before he hit the opponent, he was indeed stepped on by the opponent and pushed fiercely, so he fell back to the ground. The male colleague now said expressionlessly, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have deleted your app. I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. Zhuge, can you forgive me? How much money did you spend on this game? I'll compensate you well. I'm really sorry. I didn't know this game was so important to you, and I didn't know you really took a virtual character in the game as your girlfriend. You're too much. Is it good to make fun of people like this? Zhuge grabbed his phone without saying a word, lowered his head, and rushed out of the office. At the same time, the other man kicked his feet, and the pulley on the chair sent him to the side of the male colleague who had a good performance. The male colleague with good performance gave a start, shrugging. I didn't want to do this. I don't know why I couldn't help it. It's strange. But if you can't stand it, then you deserve it. What's this called again? Glass heart. Ha ha ha. Your reason is awesome. Hiding in the back staircase of the company, Zhuge kept poking at his phone screen. Damn it. Why didn't I connect to the account in the beginning? Nanako. It was as if he suddenly lost his mental support. Zhuge squatted on the stairs, lowering his head, looking at his phone screen in a daze. That person. It's that guy, that despicable guy. It's all his fault. It's all his fault. It was like a voice in his heart. Why did you laugh at me? I didn't offend anyone. I've always been obedient. Why did you laugh at me? Make fun of me? Why? But did I get in the way? Why did you also make my Nanako? Zhuge hugged his head, and many voices kept emerging in his heart. Many thoughts that were filled with hatred kept surging out, and in the end, they were like countless threads intertwining with each other. All of his thoughts were twisted into one. Was this world not good enough? Is it unable to accommodate me? Do you want to change it? To change this unfair world? To change these, to punish those who laugh at you? The strange black card was slowly born in the flame. Zhuge's eyes lost focus, and the old voice seemed to be beside his ears. Make a wish. As long as you make a wish, money, power, status, women, everything. His finger touched this strange black card. In front of him, it was as if the world was spinning, and suddenly everything turned black, and then it became bright. The ancient pinewood door was in front of him, and an inexplicable force made him step forward, push open the door and walk in. Welcome, respected guest. May I ask if you need anything? I, I, I only want someone who can understand me. I only want Nanako to return to my side. Looking at the new customer who directly said his wish because of the successful induction, Teinzi, who had also returned to the club with the help of the black card, was stunned. This script is wrong? Is this trash sick? What the hell is this? He only wants this kind of thing. This is different from what I expected, isn't it? Teinzi couldn't help but look at the boss of the club. However, this kind of childish request had no value in the transaction at all. Teinzi couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Could it be that the first step of the performance was only this kind of trivial result? However, Luochio didn't say anything, but just said indifferently, "Is it enough to simply restore the data?" Juga suddenly became absent-minded. "I want the real Nanako, not the data. Only Nanako can understand me, not look down on me, know how to care about me, and be willing to chat with me. I want the real Nanako. I'm willing to give my all, my everything, including my soul." Juga suddenly felt a little pain in his head, and when he came back to his senses, he found himself in the small room he rented. "Did I have a dream?" He smiled bitterly, feeling as if he had just had a strange dream. That guy with the clown mask, and that strange parchment that burned in front of him. Soul. I actually said that kind of crazy words. Juga shook his head in self-mockery. He took out his mobile phone in low spirits. Could he only download the game again? But even if he played it again, it would be another person, right? It would no longer be his Nanako. At this moment, the phone suddenly emitted a strong brilliance, projecting a beam of light toward the corner of the room. In the beam of light, some colorful spots that could be seen with the naked eye were slowly gathering together. Gradually, it became clear, gradually became real, and gradually became a human. Now, Nanako. What appeared in front of him was not a projected live 2D image, nor was it an image that could be created by any 3D technology. Instead, it was a real, living person who knew how to smile. I am not dreaming. Yin 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 PS. Today's update is complete. Looking for recommendation tickets. Looking for tips, yo. Chapter 108. Genius remembers love in 1 second divided by small. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Because it was only around 2 p.m., Luochio didn't eat the lunch prepared by Yu Yi after finishing the deal with Juga. Instead, he returned to Professor Qin Fong's villa. For Juga, it might be a long spiritual journey, but for Luochio, it was just a conversation. Of course, it didn't stop at this conversation. We'll meet again. Luochio's premonition in this aspect started to become more sensitive. The premonition and the sensitivity of the sixth sense were probably obtained with the increase of the number of deals. Luochio appeared at the back of the villa. Because there was a guest coming to the club at noon, he just made an excuse to leave. Walking around the old walls covered with emerald green Boston ivy, his gaze would always inadvertently fall upon it, because he always liked this kind of scenery full of the charm of the times. However, in one of the windows on the 3rd floor of the villa, there was a figure. Whether it was intentional or unintentional, her gaze seemed to have landed on him. That should be Qin Shuyu's room. She stood on the edge of the windowsill. This beautiful female painter didn't seem to go out early, as usual today. Luochio and her eyes met unexpectedly, but Qin Shuyu turned around and left, disappearing from the small angle of the window. What was she thinking? Because of his better eyesight, Luochio could clearly see a bit of sadness and indifference on Qin Shuyu's eyebrows, even though there was a layer of glass between them. The sadness and indifference was a bit like the coldness hidden in the servant girl's royal blue eyes when he first met Yu Yi. Qin Shuyu, Yu Sanyang. Boss Luo, who was thinking about this problem, reached out to the doorbell of the villa, but the door was opened instead. Qingrui Zhang walked out with a small satchel. She was surprised to see Luochio, and then she said, the professor said there would be guests tonight, and he had to prepare for them. Today's work will be suspended. I thought you wouldn't come back today. After all, the arrival of the customer and the arrival of the customer was not something that the merchant could accurately predict. Luochio knew that he had indeed left in a hurry an hour ago. Yes, he nodded. There wasn't anything left in the villa, so Luocio didn't plan to enter the villa again. Then you? It's fine, Luocio said casually. I can walk by myself. It should be convenient to take a car. Zhang Qingrui seemed to be in a good mood, perhaps because she didn't have to do the boring homework for half a day. She joked, "How many times have I rejected you? Being rejected by you like this is really too much for me. It's still early for dinner, don't worry." Zhang Qingrui was surprised, and then she chuckled. She seemed to be in a better mood because of such a simple conversation. It seemed that they weren't even friends, and they were classmates at best. But unexpectedly, it was easier to get along with her than with anyone else. She didn't even need to care about anything. Shaking her head, Zhang Qingrui said goodbye and left with the car. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. Luocio took a last look at the window on the third floor of the villa, thinking that the soul of the skeleton didn't move today, and Zhang Qingrui didn't show any abnormalities like yesterday. She looked much better than yesterday. Maybe, as Yi said, the weak soul had already disappeared because of Zhang Qingrui's yang qi. It didn't express anything in the end. The shadowless lamp. Luocio thought that if he changed his profession of exorcism, he would be able to retreat without using the mahogany sword and the black dog. Master Luo? Coco. With nothing else to do, Luocio directly returned to the club. Thinking that he had been delayed by some matters these days, he picked up the account book that he had taken out before and slowly read it. Zhuge's room is too messy. Don't you clean it up? That. Zhuge sat on the edge of the bed nervously. His heart beat faster as time went by. He felt nervous and didn't know how to talk. I'm a little busy. The Nanako in front of him, whether in height or body proportions, was exactly the same as the character he created when he created the account. At first, he thought it was just a dream, but after pinching his belly hard twice, the pain finally made him accept everything in front of him. Through the screen, Zhuge could talk to Nanako about anything. Of course, Nanako's response was based on the judgment of the SMART program, but Zhuge didn't care about that. But when there was no screen and the live 2D character became a real individual in the three-dimensional world, Zhuge found that he seemed to have become stuttering. How stressful! Looking at Nanako bending down to clean up the messy items on the cabinet, Zhuge couldn't even move his eyes away. A girl in such a messy room was carefully cleaning it up while scolding softly, saying words of reproach but gentle. This kind of development was really, Zhuge was so scared that he quickly drank a bottle of 2016 Coke to calm himself down. Descending from the sky? My God, is script? But no matter how he thought about it, this kind of super magical thing shouldn't happen to him. He thought of the magical place he saw in his dream. He subconsciously dug into his pocket and found that he really did take out a black card. Soul Trade. Zhuge's hand shook and the black card fell to the ground. Nah, Nanako. Zhuge suddenly looked up at the back of the girl who was tidying up the room. The girl who was set as a sweet girl, and now she was a real sweet girl, slowly turned around and did a move that could make people's heart beat. She slightly tilted her head and gently smiled. What's the matter? Zhuge took a deep breath. Nanako. You'll disappear? Nanako suddenly walked in front of Zhuge, gently held his hand with both hands, and said softly, Nanako will always be with Zhuge. Zhuge, who had probably not touched the hand of any other female except for when his mother held his hand when he was a little brat, suddenly became a little excited. So a girl's hand was actually this cold. But if she would always be with him, in that case, even if he offered his soul, it seemed to be, I'm willing. Are you, Mr. Luocio? It was the next day. Luocio punctually came to Professor Qin Feng's villa, as usual. But when he intended to press the doorbell, he was stopped by someone, a middle-aged man in a suit. He didn't get fat, but the wrinkles between his eyebrows could be seen. Luocio didn't find this man's memory in his mind. He gave a start and nodded. Yes, I am. The man also directly pointed out his purpose of coming. It's like this, we found out that you're a friend of the eldest miss, so we want to ask Mr. Luo, what was the last thing you saw our eldest miss yesterday? What? Miss has been missing since yesterday. She didn't answer the phone and didn't come back all night. She's completely uncontactable. Our old madam is very worried. The man said seriously, so, if Mr. Luo knows something, please tell me honestly. Zhang Qingrui is missing? Yin 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 PS1. If there are no accidents, this book should be on the shelves on August 5th. Originally, it was planned to be on the shelves on August 1st, but I'm a scumbag, so after I made this request, I stubbornly pushed it to August 5th. It should be a good stinging to the editor's eyes. Master Winnie is begging for a beating. Smiley face? PS2. The reason for postponing it to August 5th is that I'm not confident enough to know how many people will like my stories. On the other hand, it's a benefit for those readers who have supported me all the time. Anyway, there's a big gap between publishing on August 1st and 5th, which will hurt the author a lot. But if you like my stories, why don't I strive for a few more days for you? PS3, because I've postponed publishing, so I can only ask for the monthly votes of next month in advance. The publishing on August 5th can't beat the previous ones, but I only hope that the monthly votes won't be too bad. PS4, I love my readers, you. Chapter 109. Genius remembers love in 1 second divided by little. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. The middle-aged man's name was Shi Shiji. Yesterday afternoon, about 2:30, I parted with Zhang Qingrui here. Luochio thought for a while. I haven't seen her since. 2:30 in the afternoon? Shi Shiji nodded, but suddenly asked, "Why are you so sure it's 2:30 in the afternoon?" Luochio said, "Is it strange to have a habit of checking the time?" Shi Shiji nodded again. "Mr. Luo, if my miss contacts you, please inform me at once. This is my contact information. Business card, but only his name and phone number." After Luochio received it, Shi Shiji continued, "If you want to go in, you don't have to. There seems to be nobody inside." It seemed that Shi Shiji had been here for a while before he arrived. It was about 8 o'clock in the morning. An earlier time, at that time, Professor Qin Fong had already left. Even Qin Shuyu was nowhere to be seen. "Got it," Luochio answered Shi Shiji simply. Then, "Sorry to disturb you." After that, Shi Shiji walked along a path in the villa, disappearing into a corner. Not long after, a black car drove out from that corner. Luochio frowned. He didn't leave immediately, but walked along the wall for half a circle and came to the other side of the villa. He closed his eyes, and an ability that could be called mind's eye began to slowly cover the entire villa. This ability only appeared a few days ago. The range was not large, but he could use the mind eye to see almost everything within 20 meters. It felt like his sight was liberated from his body, a very wonderful holistic ability. At this moment, Luochio's sight appeared at the entrance of the villa. According to his memory, his sight started to move in the villa. Suddenly, Luochio frowned. There seemed to be some traces of fighting here. There was indeed no one in the villa. The skeleton in the studio was no longer there. At this moment, Boss Luo opened his eyes. There was no one around, and his figure disappeared. When he reappeared, he found some traces of a fight in the villa. In the hall of the villa, there were indeed traces of fighting. There were even some dried blood stains on a wall somewhere. The most important reason why Luochio chose to come in this way was that the stairwell with double doors under the stairs had actually been opened, and the bloodstains were right next to it. He pushed open the unlatched door. Unsurprisingly, the steel door hidden inside had already been opened. However, it was not just a narrow corner under the stairs as he had imagined. There was also a crude wooden ladder that led underground. Boss Luo didn't hesitate. He walked in and went down. It was about 3 meters underground. There was another door, but it had already been opened. Then Luochio walked in and found a corpse inside. The new boss of the club used to be a rather bold person. Since he became the boss of the club, his courage seemed to have increased by several levels. Luochio turned the corpse over. It was a middle-aged man with white hair, but it wasn't Professor Qin Fong. In the center of the relatively large underground space, there was a sand table with a diameter of 2 meters. On the sand table, there was a model of a complicated structure like a maze. There were many bookshelves and a large number of books on the 4 walls. Here, Luochio even saw many inharmonious things. Bronze mirror, Luoyang shovel, flying tiger claws made of fine steel, all kinds of weird things, even animal hooves. As a university professor, Luochio naturally didn't think Qin Fong was a superstitious person. But these things hidden here didn't seem to belong to a normal person. Even some ancient topographic maps and modern topographic maps were nailed on a corner of the wall. Looking at the sand table, Luochio was more or less aware of the strange pattern formed by the red lines in many places. Professor, could it be that you're an expert in reverse engineering? Frowning, Luochio walked to the front of a long piece table on one side. Besides a computer host, there were 3 display screens. At this moment, the pictures on 2 of the display screens showed the villa's garden and the scene inside the villa. In this villa, Qin Fong secretly installed a lot of secret surveillance cameras. So, Qin Fong has seen the scene of Zhang Qingrui's strange behavior after being possessed. After listening to Boss Luo's narration, the club's servant girl pondered. Luochio, who was reading several books taken from the table in the basement of the villa, said, I tried to read the surveillance records, but the records were destroyed within 1 day. It should be done by the professor. But the records of the day before were not. He stopped, raising his head to look at Yu Yi. The scene of me using my ability to move Zhang Qingrui should have been seen, but he didn't have time to destroy it. The person who destroyed the records should have left in a hurry. Yu Yi pondered. It's okay for the master to use his ability. Even if it's exposed, it's not a big deal as long as it doesn't spread widely. We just need to find the person who knows and make him forget about it. Well, I'm not worried about this. Luochio nodded. The servant girl said softly, Master, are you thinking that the abnormality in Professor Qin Fong's home and Zhang Qingrui's disappearance are probably related to the same thing? Qin Fong, tumble, nameless skeleton, basement surveillance, Zhang Qingrui, soul. In addition, if there was a fight in the villa, Miss Qin Shuyu, who lived with us, should know about it. But I didn't meet her. Luochio suddenly looked at Yu Yi. Do you know? Maybe when I was in junior high school, I often peeped at some documents brought home by my father. Most of them were about some cases. Then I started to analyze them with great interest. Boss Luo showed a trace of a nostalgic smile. Maybe it's a habit formed from that time. Now, I have a tendency to explore. Master, are you going to intervene in this matter? We have to find the professor first and erase his memory of my ability, don't we? Yu Yi nodded. I'll find out the whereabouts of the professor and Miss Zhang as soon as possible, as long as they're still in this city. Luochio didn't doubt Yu Ye's efficiency, or, to put it bluntly, her ability was much better than him who had lived for only 20 years. Of course, if he, as the club's boss, was willing, he would be the most efficient one. After all, the altar had the function of purchasing information with lifespan. However, it wasn't necessary yet. Therefore, because of his stepmother, Boss Luo, who had been good at housekeeping since he was a child, chose to do it himself, which was more cost-effective. Zhang Qingrui shouldn't be in danger for the time being. Otherwise, Shi Shiji wouldn't be so polite. Chapter 110. A genius remembers love in 1 second / small. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Guyu Zhai. Zhang Lilianfeng treated her granddaughter, her only relative and the real boss of Guyu Zhai, as her favorite. She was very nervous. Zhang Qingrui had always been smart since she was young. She would never disappear for a day and a night like this. Zhang Lilianfeng didn't sleep all night. She was extremely tired. She didn't let go of the phone in one hand, while her other hand kept counting the jade beads on the Buddhist bead chain. Shi Shiji returned shortly after. Including Shi Shiji, his father, and his grandfather, they had been serving in Madame Zhang's family before the founding of the country. It was not the Zhang family that Shi Shiji married into, but when Madame Zhang was still the daughter of the Li family. Madam, I'm sorry. We still haven't found any news of the eldest Mississippi. Shi Shiji looked at Zhang Lilianfeng, who was still calm. He took a deep breath and said, But we found Mrs. Carr, but it was parked in the parking lot of a shopping mall. Later, I checked the mall's CCTV. Miss didn't pick up her car. She might have gone missing in the mall. According to the Miss's temperament, there was no possibility of her joking at this time. I'm afraid this is a kidnapping. But even if it's a kidnapping, we haven't received any communication from the kidnapper yet. Zhang Lilianfeng opened her eyes abruptly. This lady had been chanting Buddhist scriptures and eating vegetarian food for the past few decades. She had long lost the smell of gunpowder. However, at this moment, Sir Shiji saw a touch of cold light in the lady's serious face. Back then, I left the capital as an orphan and a widow. It's been decades, and now I've finally raised a child. Do you really think that a widow like me is easy to bully? How dare you bully me? Zhang Lilianfang stood up abruptly. She was so angry that she shouted, "Even though I am an old woman, I am not dead yet. Madam, please calm down." "I will." Zhang Lilianfang took a deep breath. "If I panic, it will only get worse. Shiji, for the next 2 days, until we find Miss, you will temporarily take over the shop. Everything will be normal. If anyone asks about it, just treat it as Miss not feeling well these 2 days and rest at home." Sure Shiji nodded and said, "Madam, old Master Zhong still lives here. Can we ask him for help?" Zhang Lilianfang snorted coldly. "It's not time yet. No matter how long that old bastard's whip is, it hasn't reached this place yet. We're not sure of the situation yet. You can continue to search while we wait and see." "All right." Sure Shiji nodded and quickly retreated. Zhang Lilianfang supported herself on the table and slowly sat down. With her hand on her forehead, she closed her eyes while her shoulders slightly trembled. Was she crying? Black Soul, no. Nine knew that this old woman was lamenting in her heart. He had always been here. Many days ago, he had been here, silently watching. Reason told him that he needed to open up new businesses for the club, but he was unwilling to leave. Seeing Zhang Lilianfang sobbing, all of a sudden, Black Soul 9 moved 2 steps forward subconsciously, reaching out his hand to touch her, but finally stopped in the air. "Why do I feel so uncomfortable?" Black Soul number 9, how was at a loss. After Yu Yi went out, Luochio came to the professor's villa again, coming to the hidden basement. Unknowingly, several hours had passed since he had entered. He was looking at several maps of different eras that were nailed on the wall. They ranged from rough to fine, but no matter which one it was, they all had markings in the same place. Nguyen Ula Mountain. In fact, the books that were often flipped through on the table were all about the mountain and the surrounding terrain. Luochio sat on the old leather chair in front of the patchwork table. From here, he could see the model on the sand table. Looking at everything here, he felt that the cushion of the chair had sunk a lot, and the floor under the table had been worn out. His fingers touched the edge of the drawer, looking at the dried brown spots on the drawer. Boss Luo seemed to see an old man who had worked hard in this place. Something had been supporting him all the time. Suddenly, a squeaking sound came from outside the front door. It was the sound of someone stepping on the wooden stairs. Boss Luo's feeling was getting more and more accurate. The person who was going down the stairs was Qin Shuyu. He didn't choose to leave. His intuition told him that Qin Shuyu might have come here earlier than him. The woman who had looked at him silently by the window not long ago might not be as simple as Professor Qin Fong's adopted daughter. Finally, Qin Shuyu, who was wearing a white slim-fit dress, appeared at the entrance. You couldn't use noble or ethereal to describe this woman, because she seemed to exist with these definitions. To put it simply, apart from the appearance, it was probably the best interpretation of the saying, mainly depends on the temperament. She was Yusanyang in her previous life. She had loved and lost all hope, so the High Jade Emperor Heart Seal Sutra reached a stage of perfection. What she had experienced after that was unknown. However, compared to simply living for 500 years, it was much more complicated and difficult to understand. Since Luo Qiu speculated that the other party might have seen the content of the surveillance video earlier than him, he didn't intend to keep silent. He waited for the other party to speak first. Then he would speak carefully. Boss Luo took the initiative to open his mouth. "Miss Qin, or Yusan Yang?" As if she wasn't surprised by such a question, or perhaps she just didn't show her emotions on her face. The one in front of him said indifferently, "You're really not an ordinary person." Luochio stood up. Perhaps he had been used to being the club boss for some time, or he just felt it was impolite to sit and talk with others. He pointed at the corpse on the floor of the basement. "Miss Qin, do you know who this person is?" Qin Shiyu said, "He's a person who learned some unorthodox ways and did unrighteous things. His death is not regrettable." Seeing the strangeness of the basement and the suspicion about the professor's real identity, Qin Shiyu's answer also confirmed Luochio's thought. Miss Qin doesn't seem to worry about the professor's disappearance, Luochio suddenly said. At this moment, Qin Shiyu said indifferently, "That man just did something to make himself feel better. There's nothing to worry about. He's just a poor man who has been tortured by guilt for decades. He won't hurt anyone. As for Zhang Qingrui, she'll come back naturally when the matter is over. So I don't have anything to worry about." That man? Luochio sensitively grasped the incongruity of this appellation. Qin Shiyu glanced at Luochio indifferently. "Who are you?" These were two different questions, and there was some friction between a man and a woman. Flight, Ulaanbaatar. There was a cubic meter box in the luggage compartment of the plane. In the box, Zhang Qingrui's body was curled up and sleeping. Her face was covered with a respirator. Yin 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 PS1. This is F*King embarrassing. I seem to see a lot of people cursing in the book review section. But what can we do? PS2. Here's the thing. Last night, the author of this book said that the book would be published on the 5th with a perturbed mood. Then today, it's confirmed that the book will be published on the 1st. PS3. What happened in the middle will not be revealed here. After all, no author will seek death like this. First, she said that the book will be published later, but then changed it back to this stupid plus funny plus hurtful words. I'm also dumbfounded, as if I saw a scene of sudden death. It's so beautiful that I dare not look at it. PS4. Let me comfort myself by saying, I seem to have said last night, if there's no accident, the book will be published on the 5th. Please don't beat me to death. PS5. It's confirmed that the book will be published on the 1st. So I have to change the rhythm. Including the one in the daytime, I'll update 4 chapters today. Tomorrow is Saturday. I'll update 4 or 5 chapters. On Sunday, I'll update 3 chapters. I can only do these as compensation. So, to what extent can the book be published on the 1st? It's up to fate. PS6. I don't post much PS recently. The soul of PS has been suppressed for too long and needs to explode. Of course, PS can't be used casually after the book is published. So the meaning of PS this time is there will be 2 more chapters before 12 o'clock in the evening. Finally, I beg not to be beaten to death. Chapter 111. Genius 1, Second Remember Love, /go/small. Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. A bit of heavy pressure existed in the trembling air. Boss Luo, who had always felt that the so-called momentum could suppress people and words were too exaggerated, finally overthrew his previous thoughts as he gradually transformed into an inhuman being and became more sensitive to touch. Luochio wasn't nervous, but felt a bit troublesome. For him, this heavy pressure was just a breeze. Maybe the other party just wanted to test him, so he didn't take it seriously. Or he really didn't need to be afraid of anything. Listen, if you want to solve every problem by force, you're a reckless man. Luochio couldn't help but think of his father's teachings. But if you want to solve the problem by force, you're an idiot if you want to solve the problem by force. Therefore, Boss Luo didn't understand the meaning of his father's down-to-earth double standard. I don't mean any harm, Luochio said softly. So he just chose to fight back. This was a contest on the spiritual level. Eye contact was enough for both sides to have a sufficient stage. Qin Shiyu had been cultivating for hundreds of years, so her sight was no longer a sight, but a spiritual horn. She could see through many hidden things in the world, so she naturally saw that there seemed to be a door standing behind this mysterious young man. What kind of door was that? It was a door that seemed to have absorbed countless cries of despair and was filled with piles of white bones. Just a few more glances were enough to make her Taoist heart tremble, as if it would shatter at any moment. She could not even imagine what was gathered behind the door to be able to release such a horrifying presence. Qin Shiyu stepped back half a step. A trace of panic flashed in her eyes, and a little bit of dark red overflowed from the corner of her mouth. In just a moment, her body had suffered a small loss. This was nothing. It was just that the fear was like a seed that had been forcibly planted into her body, her spirit, and her Tao heart at this moment. She even had an instinct to directly escape. The important thing was she had felt such a door before. 500 years ago. Trafford. Club. Qin Shiyu's blood-stained lips trembled. She took a deep breath vigilantly. But you're not that person. Luochio guessed that the person referred to here was his former boss. The club had a group of non-human customers lurking in the world. Even Tianzi knew about this place when he was alive, so Luochio was not too surprised that Qin Shiyu knew about it. It wasn't that person. Perhaps she had bought something from the club before. Of course, if he wanted to confirm it, he could go back and look through his old account books. After confirming this, Luochio was not in a hurry to find out what Yu Sanyang had bought in the club 500 years ago. Since there was no need to continue hiding, Luochio waved his hand naturally and gracefully. A chair leaning against the wall slid to the front of Qin Shiyu. Can we continue to talk about the professor? After weighing for a moment, Qin Shiyu didn't sit down. She had a feeling that if he wanted to catch her, there was no possibility for her to leave. Love, go, shall say W. Chu, that place was not a holy mountain. It had existed for much longer than her cultivation time. But when she woke up last time, she could hardly hear any rumors about that place. She walked to the sand table placed in the center, pointing at the model on it. Do you know whose tomb this is? Luochio shook his head. Xiong knew, a certain left virtuous prince. Qin Shiyu calmed down her internal injury, while saying, it's a place where Qin Fong and his expedition team broke into 20 years ago. The professor's job is indeed not a paleontology expert. He's a descendant of a traitorous family from the Ming and Qin dynasties. His apparent job is just a cover. Qin Shiyu said indifferently, as for the skeleton you've seen during this period, it should be taken out by Qin Fong recently. There was a soul and a spirit attached to the skeleton. It was originally very weak. Without the nourishment of the Gravesine Qi, it would have been hard to survive. Speaking of this, Qin Shiyu glanced at Luochio strangely. That Ms. Zhang, if I'm not wrong, has the rare psychic constitution. The soul and spirit could enter her body. It should be an instinctive desire for survival. It can be maintained by Ms. Zhang. This statement happened to be the same as what Yu Yi said. After praising his servant girl a little in his heart, Boss Luo asked, what happened in the ancient tomb 20 years ago? Qin Shiyu shook her head. I don't know. That year when I woke up in the cave residence, I reached a new stage and needed to enter the secular world to cultivate again. I accidentally walked to that graveyard and saw Qin Fong and a person covered with blood crawling out of the crypt. That woman didn't survive, but asked him to take care of the young girl in her hometown before she died. Qin Shiyu shook her head. I needed a new identity to enter the secular world. So before I transformed, I sent the young girl to a big family, and then she became Qin Fong's adopted daughter. You said he did that to make himself feel better? Luochio frowned. Qin Shiyu said, it seemed that he had been blaming himself for not being able to save his brothers in the ancient tomb. Maybe he wanted to take out the skeleton of his teammates. Qin Shiyu frowned. I don't know about this. I just woke up. The above information was sorted out from the words Qin Fong said when he was drunk in the past 20 years. She looked at the screen on the table again. These years, he has been studying the ancient tomb here. This place is almost his lifetime's work, so he was extra careful. That day when he came back and saw the scene on the monitor, he believed that Zhang Qingrui might be an opportunity for him to enter the ancient tomb again. It was he who caught Zhang Qingrui. Yes. And Qin Shiyu looked at Luochio again. He also saw the scene where you used the power beyond ordinary people. This made Qin Fong start to doubt something, so he had to take the risk. Doubt. Last time he seemed to enter the ancient tomb with some other people in cooperation, and then dug out this skeleton. Qin Shiyu said indifferently, there should be some disputes on the way, so Qin Fong secretly sent the skeleton away. You probably thought you were a member of the partner, but I didn't expect that the partner really did find us. Last night, they were fighting here. Was this person killed by the professor? I was the one who did it. Of course, I did it secretly. Qin Shiyu said indifferently. After all, he took care of me all these years, so I've repaid part of his kindness. Luochio was thinking about the next step, so now he was silent. Suddenly, the air shook a little. The club's servant girl stepped in front of Luochio. Seeing Qin Shiyu, Yui gave a start at first, her royal blue eyes slightly flashing. It's okay. Luochio waved his hand. She was also a customer. 500 years ago. That was even before Miss Servant Girl started to serve the club. Yui nodded, then whispered in Luochio's ear, Master, I didn't find Professor Qin Fong, but I checked his boarding information last night at midnight. Where? Ulan Bader. Yin 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 PS1. Third update. PS2. Entrusted by someone. I can't refuse, so I recommend an indescribable quarterly novel, Infinite Collapse. This is a book with a totally different style from mine. Anyway, it's a quarterly novel. Anyway, indescribable. Chapter 112. Genius remembers love in 1 second divided by little. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. When Zhang Qingrui woke up, she found that she was almost lying on the ground. Why was it almost? Of course, it was because there was a pure woolen blanket on the ground. Above her sight was a dome like an umbrella, supported by a large amount of wood and hung with a white canvas. This was undoubtedly a yurt. Are you awake? Have something to eat. Following the voice, Zhang Qingrui saw Professor Qin Fong was holding a piece of flatbread, tearing it apart and putting it into his mouth. However, his eyes were fixed on a map spread out on the ground. In the same yurt, there was a smaller box. Inside the box was the set of skeletons. Her body was indeed in a state of hunger. Zhang Qingrui stood up silently, taking a piece of flatbread and a bowl of slightly salty milk tea called sateka by the locals. She quickly hid in a corner, eating the food in silence with fear and uneasiness. This was the third time she woke up. As for the previous 2 times, she was basically knocked out by Professor Qin Fong with a taser. But this time, she could only give up the idea of resisting temporarily. Tearing off a small piece of the cake, Zhang Qingrui looked at the box subconsciously. Soul, bones, possession? Almost in a way of impact, she kept colliding with the concepts formed by the socialist science education she received these years. I am the key to enter the graveyard? Every time she fainted, Zhang Qingrui felt as if there was another person in her mind. Fragments of memories from long ago kept appearing in her mind. They were fragmented. They seemed to have no main line. They seemed to be trying to tell her a complete story, but they were not complete themselves. In the dream, she always had a feeling of wanting to cry. This kind of sadness that came from her heart and perhaps didn't belong to her kept stirring her heart even after she woke up. Theoretically, she was forcibly taken away by Professor Qin Fong, and there was no way to communicate with the outside world. The professor's means of confinement couldn't be considered as gentle, so she should be more frightened and frightened. However, it seemed that because she was about to reach a certain place, there was another kind of excitement hidden in her heart. Professor, why are you so insistent on going back into that ancient tomb? In any case, he wasn't a complete stranger. In the 2 years of Zhang Qingrui's life, Qin Fong, as one of the tutors in her college life, was a bit of an elder after all. She was afraid of him, but not to the extent that she didn't dare to talk to him. But Qin Fong was not like the customers in the antique shop she dealt with. He carried out this operation with a clear sense of paranoia, so it was naturally dangerous. There are some things I need to get back. Qin Fong was still looking at the map on the ground. Is it a rather valuable cultural relic? Probably because of her family background, Zhang Qingrui easily connected the unknown ancient tomb with the cultural relics. In fact, she had come into contact with people who sold cultural relics. Gu Yuzhai's business was huge, so they had all kinds of connections. These connections were all made by her grandmother, but almost half of them were handed over to her. Things that could really be called good treasures were things that had long been covered in dust under the soil. As for finding such good treasures, it naturally required a more special and obscure professional. Unexpectedly, Qin Fong suddenly stood up. There are some warm clothes on the cabinet. You'd better put them on. We'll set off later, and the temperature on the grassland will drop to very low in the evening. After finishing his words, Professor Qin Fong opened the yurt, walking outside. When Zhang Qingrui woke up last time, she had walked out of this yurt. Surrounded by the vast grassland, the professor seemed to live in a house on the grassland. She didn't understand a language here, so she couldn't communicate with the owner of this house. She really didn't know where to escape to in this grassland. Zhang Qingwei didn't think she was a particularly strong girl, so her heart had long been in a mess when she encountered the current situation. On the other hand, an indescribable sense of excitement spread in her heart. She was vaguely looking forward to what was going to happen, as if this was something that could bring a stone to her life that had always been tranquil. First of all, I can't starve myself. Zhang Qingrui cheered up, quickly finishing the pancake in her hand and reaching for another one on the plate. This time, it was not only a pancake, but also a plate of mutton that she hadn't touched before. In the past, she would dislike the mutton's rank smell, but now she could enjoy it with relish. While eating, Zhang Qingrui had an idea. She didn't know what would happen next, so she quietly wrapped up a pancake and hid it in her clothes. Outside the yurt, Professor Qin Fong sat at the place where other people fed the sheep, lighting a Cuban cigar, silently watching the smoke rising into the clear blue sky, silently waiting for the grassland to turn cold. Just as he already knew, the altar's long-distance teleportation was very harsh on applications that were not within its business scope. It was like a vampire. The one-way journey to Curie Bader cost 10 days. After complaining silently, Boss Luo finally chose a one-day flight. Of course, there was no way to compare the efficiency, but according to Qin Shuyu's words, the professor wouldn't do any harm to Zhang Qingrui. In the departure hall, naturally, there was no way to meticulously prepare food outside, or so you thought. But Miss Maid of the club perfectly explained the great significance of humans' invention of the food box. The Japanese-style food box had 3 layers, each containing exquisite food. Miss Qin, do you also need some? Yu Yi asked Qin Shuyu while placing the luxurious food boxes in order in front of Luochio. No need. Qin Shuyu shook her head. Not only in front of Luochio, but also in front of this Miss Maid who claimed to be just a master's maid. Qin Shuyu could feel the enormous pressure, and this pressure would most likely not lessen for some time to come. I have something to ask the professor, and I don't want to delay it for too long. If the professor's destination is that ancient tomb, Miss Qin should remember it. Can you lead the way? Not long ago, after this club member clearly expressed his intention, Qin Shuyu could only agree. Because this Miss Maid who was introducing the contents of the food box to her master seemed to be the most terrifying thing she had felt in the past 500 years, except for that door. It was like an abyss of cumulus clouds, and also like an unknowingly surging undercurrent. Yin 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 P.S. 4th update. Chapter 113. Genius remembers love in 1 second divided by small. Shua Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. The grass on the grassland withered and flourished with each passing year. Zhang Qingrui thought of such a poem miraculously. She was now in a Jeep Wrangler running on the grassland. The temperature difference between morning and night was indeed great. Zhang Qingrui wrapped her clothes tightly subconsciously. Since they entered the grassland, she had sensed more and more heaviness from the professor's eyes, and he spoke less and less. She didn't know how to describe it. She just felt that there was a trace of solidifying determination on the professor's body. The Jeep Wrangler drove for nearly 3 hours and finally stopped in front of Pitt. The professor locked the car and pinned the key on his neck. He was indeed a cautious person. Zhang Qingrui couldn't help smiling bitterly. Not to mention her inexplicable desire to escape. The mere sight of the pistol carried by the professor had made her flinch. After that, the professor set up a field tent, picked up some dry twigs nearby, and skillfully made a fire to boil brick tea. Finally, he added some cheese, and the simple but charming aroma began to spread around the bonfire. Zhang Qingrui held the warm milk tea, sitting at the edge of the bonfire. Watching the flame swaying under the strong grassland wind, she felt like a group of demons dancing wildly. Professor Qin Fong threw several packs of chocolate biscuits to her, which could quickly replenish calories. In this place, there was no need to pay too much attention. Zhang Qingrui tore open a pack silently, feeling embarrassed that she had hidden a piece of biscuit on her body not long ago. Subconsciously, she laughed at herself. Why are you laughing? Zhang Qingrui gave a start, but she responded quickly, saying casually, I'm just thinking that Luochio didn't know about the professor's affairs, and whether he would come to your villa for several times in vain these days. You'd better stay away from that guy in the future. Zhang Qingrui looked at Professor Qin Fong curiously. She didn't understand why the professor seemed to be afraid of Luochio. She pondered for a while. Though he's a little eccentric and a student who often doesn't attend classes, at least he's not a bad guy. He's a very quiet person. Professor Qin Fong said indifferently, quiet people are scarier. Zhang Qingrui didn't say anything. It was said that if an honest person didn't get angry, even the gods and ghosts would be wary of them. The professor had lived for half his life, so his knowledge and bearing were actually extraordinary. Now that he had made such a crazy move, it was because he had to do it. But thinking about it, such a person wouldn't deliberately smear someone's reputation, right? You're much calmer than I thought. After a long silence, Lecturer Qin Fong suddenly opened his mouth. Not only was it because they were nearing their destination, but there was also a trace of uneasiness behind that madness. So, did they want to find someone to casually talk to? You need to be calm when you're in trouble, especially when it's a big deal. Zhang Qingrui looked at the bonfire quietly. My grandmother taught me this when I was young. Professor Qin Fong also nodded. Madame Zhang is indeed a woman who can teach people in this way. Professor, you know my grandmother? Professor Qin Fong said indifferently. Before your grandmother got married, the Li family was engaged in the business of making money from dead people. Even if the people in the underworld didn't know them, they would have heard of them. You're the only successor of Guyu Zhai. Don't you know about this business? Zhang Qingrui became silent. But Professor Qin Fong was obviously talkative now, so Zhang Qingrui plucked up her courage and asked, Professor, who on earth did that skeleton belong to? I don't know either, but Professor Qin Fong frowned. This question seemed to have touched something in his heart. Zhang Qingrui looked at him nervously, but at this moment, bang! On the vast grassland, a thunderous sound suddenly burst out. Zhang Qingrui was startled. Before she could react, the sound had already sounded one after another. The bullets hit the ground, raising mud and dust that could be clearly seen under the light of the fire. Several strong lights shone from afar. Professor Qin Fong gritted his teeth, rushing to Zhang Qingrui's side. He grabbed her arm and rushed to the side, hiding behind a slope. In this case, even the great tranquility chi was useless. Under the continuous gunshots, Zhang Qingrui hugged her head with both hands, curling up and asking in horror, Professor, who on earth are they? A group of unscrupulous guys, even more ferocious than lions and tigers. Professor Qin Fong said, squatting and looking ahead, I took a detour to avoid them, but I didn't expect to be found by them. While speaking, Professor Qin Fong took a deep breath, pulling out a pistol from his waist and stuffing it into Zhang Qingrui's hand. Now it's time to see if the great tranquility chi your grandma taught you is useful or not. No matter whether you can shoot or not, shoot if you don't want to die. Zhang Qingrui gave a start, feeling the weight of the bullet. Then she heard the professor continue. I'll count to 3, then rush to the car immediately. As long as you get on the car, you can at least escape. Ms. Zhang nodded with a pale face, taking a deep breath to stabilize her slightly trembling arm. She had to hold the pistol with both hands, nervously waiting for Professor Qin Fong's signal. 1, 2. Kicking his legs, Professor Qin Fong tore off his clothes, taking out another concealed pistol and firing several shots at the attacker. 3. Zhang Qingrui had no time to care about that. There was only one thought in her mind, which was to rush to the car as soon as possible. It was about 10 meters away, but Ms. Zhang, who had the habit of exercising, didn't find it difficult. But every second felt like a long time. Zhang Qingrui's heart had never beat so fast. She felt the hope of survival when she was about to touch the car. She looked back subconsciously, only to find that Professor Qin Fong had fallen behind her. Professor Qin Fong's face revealed an extremely painful expression. Suddenly, Zhang Qingrui was hesitating whether to continue running to the car or turn back to pull Professor Qin Fong. But at this moment, all the hesitation was unnecessary, because two men in off-road suits suddenly jumped out from behind the Wrangler. When did it happen? Perhaps he had already found his way to the other side of the car and hid there. Zhang Qingrui thought, but she could only retreat. The two men's expressions were full of haze, approaching her step by step. Compared to the automatic rifles in their hands, Zhang Qingrui found the lethality of the small pistol in her hands was like a joke. However, she still pointed the tip of her spear at the other party, but the body of the spear was shaking because of the panic in her body. The two men glanced at each other, sneered disdainfully. One whistled while the other pulled the trigger directly. The bullets poured down on the soil in front of Zhang Qingrui, raising a burst of dust. The man seemed to want to toy with her. He kept shooting at her. Zhang Qingrui was like a cat standing on an iron plate. She tried to hide in fear, but the extreme joy was the opposite. Such teasing, which was close to humiliation, finally broke Ms. Zhang's tight nerves. Regardless of whether she knew how to shoot or not, eldest Ms. Zhang, whose face had turned pale, pulled the trigger of the pistol fiercely and shot madly. Bang! 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 The bullets fell beside the two men, giving them a fright. They were rolling on the ground, but eldest Miss Zhang had run out of bullets in less than 2 seconds. Bitch! Seizing this opportunity, the man who teased her at the beginning snorted, pulling out a dagger from his boots, rushing forward instantly. At this moment, the man's body suddenly flew out like a kite with a broken string, screaming miserably. Right in front of Zhang Qingrui's eyes, a figure came out of nowhere and knocked down another man in a few moves with his horrifying skills. She didn't have time to see the person's appearance clearly, but she knew it was probably a woman. Then she saw that the woman didn't intend to stop, jumping over two bow and heading to the other side. The scene in front of her was like special effects, which made Ms. Zhang stand still in a daze. But at this moment, there seemed to be footsteps behind her. Zhang Qingrui turned around out of instinct and pointed at the empty pistol in panic. Relax. Luochio. Yin Yin P.S. It's still compensation for 4 chapters, 1/4. Chapter 114. Genius remembers love in 1 second divided by little. Shua Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Zhang Qingrui felt her brain went blank for a long time before she reacted. Several miserable screams came from the front. Why are you here? Thinking that her first question was similar to that of Boss Luo, he answered quickly, I'm here for the professor. Recalling the professor's warning words not long ago, Zhang Qingrui stepped back subconsciously. Don't think too much. Luochio glanced at Zhang Qingrui before turning around. Zhang Qingrui followed his line of sight and saw something. It gradually became clearer in the night under the remaining firelight. It was the beautiful girl beside Luochio, whom she met on the plane. His girlfriend? She vaguely remembered that the girl's name was Yu Yi. The last time she saw her, she was dressed very fashionably with an unforgettable temperament. This time, she wore a thin black long-sleeve shirt, a pair of camouflage mountaineering trousers, and a pair of mountaineering shoes. Quiet as an orchid, moving as a rabbit, these words were used to describe her. But anyway, what really frightened Zhang Qingrui was that Yu Yi walked back slowly, but behind her, on the ground, 3 men's bodies were automatically dragged behind her. Luochio knew that he only knocked them out. He came here to erase part of Professor Qin Fang's memory. Since erasing 1 or 2 memories was the same, Boss Luo didn't intend to explain or hide anything to Zhang Qingrui since he got Yu Yi, the capable servant girl. Boss Luo gradually became lazy and didn't intend to explain or conceal anything to Zhang Qingrui. After throwing the 3 men aside and the 2 men who were knocked down at the beginning to the same place, Yu Yi looked at her master's eyes, walking to the front of Professor Qin Fang, reaching out her hands to gently hold his forehead. After a while, Master, he wasn't shot. Yu Yi raised her head and said softly, It's just the symptoms of the body acting up. Well, there should be suppressants with him, but he might not have had time to take them. The professor's face was very pale, and blood was dripping from his nostrils. Symptoms: brain cancer, terminal stage. Yu Yi stood up. With the current medical level, It's impossible to save him. He probably has less than 2 months to live. Luocio nodded. Frowning, he crouched down and reached out to touch the pockets on the professor's clothes. He took out a small bottle from his chest. There were no instructions, so Luocio had to pour one out. He looked up at Zhang Qingrui and asked, "Do you have water?" Zhang Qingrui nodded and took out a bottle of mineral water from the car. Even though she had many questions in her heart, she could only temporarily wait for the professor to recover. Were there any more of those armed fellows nearby? The purpose of Luocio looking for the professor, the girl called Yu Ye's unimaginable skills, and master? She was sure she didn't mishear this sentence. Ms. Zhang felt it wasn't safe to go anywhere. She could only force herself to calm down and wait for the opportunity to communicate. Not long after taking the medicine, Professor Qin Fong woke up with a cough. He rubbed his forehead, trying to look at the things in his blurred vision. There were 2 of his students and a woman he had never seen before. Luocio, you saved me? In his early years, Professor Qin Fong, who had led an expedition team, had experienced a lot in the mighty construction movement of a new country. If Zhang Qingrui had a sense of calmness, it was at most a little. The one who really had a sense of calmness was this old man who was over 50 years old. I've been to your house and the professor's basement. Luocio explained some problems in simple words. The professor hasn't erased some surveillance records yet. Professor Qin Fong glanced at Luocio with a complicated expression. When I was in the underworld, I could hear some strange deeds from the underworld. Most of us in this line of work have some taboos about strange forces and supernatural things. I didn't expect to meet them. He shook his head, standing up after taking several deep breaths. But no matter what, I have to enter the ancient tomb. You don't have to stop me if you want to. Professor Qin Fong, based on your current physical condition, you may fall down at any time. You may not reach the place you expect. Yui suddenly said in a low voice. Who are you? Professor Qin Fong frowned. How do you know I? Speaking of this, Professor Qin Fong suddenly frowned, pretending to look around. He reached out his hand and touched in front of himself, asking hurriedly, Is the fire out? All of a sudden, he felt his sight turn dark and couldn't see anything. Luocio was puzzled. The bonfire is still there, just a little bit weaker. Hearing this, Professor Qin Fong's whole body shook slightly. He subconsciously reached out to touch his eyes, then looked up at the sky. At least he could see the starlight in the night sky of the grassland. Professor Qin Fong heaved a long sigh. Really? The doctor said I might lose my sight during this period. He smiled bitterly, feeling somewhat desperate. I didn't expect it's here. I really can't go in again? The person in front of you, your student, can help you, as long as your desire reaches the strongest. Suddenly, Qin Fong heard a faint voice. It was the voice of his adopted daughter, Qin Chuyu. They were too familiar with each other. After all, they had been living together for 20 years. Chuyu? Or am I hallucinating? Professor Qin Fong in front of him looked a little crazy. Luocio frowned, looking at a certain direction thoughtfully. This strange monk didn't show up directly on the grounds as she didn't want to meet him directly. But at this moment, Professor Qin Fong suddenly said, Luocio, can you take me in? No matter what, as long as you take me in, I can give you all my property. If it's you, you should have that ability. What was the feeling of a sudden business call? Professor Qin Fong's strong desire at this moment seemed to be a way for this Miss Taoist to return a part of the kindness of raising him. Yu Sanyang was able to meet the former boss, probably because she knew that the club was a mechanism of accepting all visitors, or she had already seen through the nature of the club's willingness to make this kind of deal. However, from the perspective of a person with superpower, she should be able to help Professor Qin Fong. Was it because she didn't want to help, or was there any reason that she couldn't help? But Qin Shiyu didn't know that the new boss of the club was a little casual, thinking that Luocio was the kind of person who didn't give anything in return. In fact, Luocio, who had come to this prairie and had an impulse to explore, also had the idea of going into that ancient tomb. But before he had time to express this intention, this Miss Taoist had already taken the initiative. She probably did something bad out of kindness, triggering the transaction mechanism of the club. Under this mechanism, Luaccio wasn't Luaccio. He was Boss Luo. As you wish, dear guest, Luaccio said slowly, but we don't accept money as the transaction fee. Yin P.S. 2/4.